welcome back everyone. So in this first part of this video, we're going to be talking about Vray Fur. So in the beginning, I'm going to be showing you Vray Fur modifier or Vray Fur object, whatever you want to call it. And later on, we're going to be, I'm going to be showing you guys how to create a wax material. So before I'm going to get into this, just please watch the first video that is going to be called Vray Materials Introduction. It's going to be on this same playlist. So please do check that out because I will introduce you with the scene, with the studio setup scene, and with rendering settings, with max settings, with camera settings, and everything like that, basically with system units and all of that kind of stuff. Because the thing is, I want you to get the same results, right? So a lot of people don't even know how to set up max properly, rendering settings and all that kind of stuff, all of the good stuff. So like I said, I want you to get the same results, right? So please do watch that video before you watch any of the other Vray materials video, right? And yeah, so let's do it. So as you can see here, I did create a Vray Fur object, material, whatever you want to call it. So I think the best way to approach this is gonna be to explain you guys how to use Vray Fur object modifier / modifier in general, right? So basically, first you need to understand how Vray Fur object modifier works. And it's really simple, nothing complicated there. I'm gonna try to simplify this by showing some drawings on Photoshop. And I think that's going to be quite useful. So this is the Vray Fur that I created. We're going to talk about that a bit later on. It's quite easy to set up, nothing too complicated. You just need to be a bit more creative, obviously, especially with the textures, right? So in the beginning, I'm going to be showing you guys how to create a Vray Fur object. So this is a material test fur scene. So I'm going to create another scene, which is going to be called I think I had it already. There we go. So I'm going to save it, override it, right? There we go. So I'm going to jump straight into that scene now. And the next thing I'm going to basically do is delete this object completely, right? So I'm going to keep a complete empty scene. So I'm going to right click on this plane here, and I'm going to put obviously renderable off, right? Because I don't want it to render. So if I'm gonna press the interactive rendering, obviously I'm not gonna get anything because I don't have anything in my scene, and this is not renderable, right? So one thing to notice is actually this is really important. So unit systems, I was explaining this in my Vray Materials introduction video. I usually work in centimeters on display and centimeters in system, because I've noticed in my 12 years of experience that works the best, even with exteriors, interiors, or even small objects as well. And in general with modifiers, right? Because keep in mind that, for example, a thing like Vray Fur modifier or object, if you're gonna import, let's just say I will create this Vray Fur object, right? And I'm gonna export this Vray Fur object to or import to another scene. And let's just say that scene was created in millimeters or meters or whatever, right? So keep in mind that Vray Fur is not gonna look the same, right? So you're gonna have to go to Vray Fur settings and adjust some settings again, basically just to get the same result, because it's going to be quite sensitive to units. So just keep that in mind. And it's not only Vray Fur. There are a lot of other things that are going to be quite sensitive to the unit scale, right? Which is, for example, display and system, right? So you could get issues. So to avoid issues, you need to try to match the unit system as close as possible, right? So obviously it has to be the same, right? Kind of. So just keep that in mind, all right? All right, so let's just start playing around with Vray Fur. I'm gonna try to show you as much examples as possible. So let's just create a plane, okay? So you can create this plane by dragging this, but I'm just gonna delete it. And I'm gonna go here, keyboard entry, and I'm gonna put maybe 250 and 250, and I'm gonna press create. There we go, in the middle. And I'm gonna put this at 10 centimeters, maybe 5 should be enough. So this plane is at 0, obviously we're not rendering this, and this one is at, that's fine, yeah. So I'm gonna put this plane somewhere here, all right, so we can, there we go. So let's just use 300, so 3 meters by 3 meters, right? Let's just put this somewhere there. Okay, so there we go. We have 4 by 4, right? So that's fine. That's obviously, that's going to be a better result there for us to show. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create 2 really simple V-Ray materials, right? So the first material is going to be a darkish material, which is going to be maybe 8 or 10. So I'm going to do that. And the next thing we're going to do obviously is going to be creating a Vray Fur object, right? So what I'm going to have to do is basically press this Vray Fur button here, which is a shortcut on V-Ray toolbar. So you can, first of all, keep in mind you have to select the object, right? You have to select the object. So you can do it in this way, or you can go here, find V-Ray, and press, obviously select your object and press Vray Fur. Literally the same thing, right? But obviously here is a lot faster, right? Now another thing is really important is that keep in mind, if you had a Vray Fur object in your scene, and whenever you're gonna create another Vray Fur, so let's just say I'm gonna create a sphere, right? And I'm gonna create another Vray Fur object, right? So let's just say I will select this dummy. By the way, this is just a dummy, an indication that, you know, it's gonna be easier to select. If you're gonna change the height or whatever, it's not gonna affect anything, right? It's just a indication that, you know, there is a Vray Fur, because sometimes you can have really small hair strands, right? You're gonna barely see them, so you're not gonna be able to select it. So what you're gonna select is this indicator there, right? Or you can make, for example, a selection set like fur, you know, underscore version 1. So even if you cannot select that, you can go here and just press fur, right? So obviously it's going to be a selection set. All right, so for example, let's just say, you know, this Vray Fur has a length of 2 centimeters, right? So one hair strand is going to be 2 centimeters. Now look what's going to happen if I'm going to press on this sphere and I'm going to press Vray Fur again. So now you can see that all the settings are the same as this one, right? So whenever you had a Vray Fur object in your scene from previous, right? From previous time, if you're gonna create a new one, literally that new Vray Fur is gonna take all the history from the previous one, right? So just keep that in mind. Now there is no button to reset it, and even if you delete the memory, right, it's not gonna reset it, okay? By the way, this is prune scripts, prune scene script. It's a really useful script just to clean some things, and obviously it's antivirus active. It's pretty cool. I was explaining this into my how to become a 3D artist course, so please do check that out if you want to. But it's a cheap script, but it's an amazing script. Obviously, I think it's $7 at the moment. I'm not sure. So if you type prune scripts on Google, you will find it there. So all right, so cool. So I will delete this sphere now because it's not important. Now if you want to reset, for whatever reason, if you want to reset the Vray Fur, I think the easiest way to do this is going to be open a dummy scene, a completely new fresh scene, right? And just create whatever and create an object there we go. And just select that object and just press copy. I'm using a copy paste script. You will find it on Google. Just type copy paste script 3ds Max and you will find it. And I was explaining about that into my how to become a 3D artist course as well, so check that out as well. And obviously if you have any other questions how to install it or whatever, just, you know, leave me a comment. I will try to obviously answer that as soon as possible. So literally you're gonna copy this object. So obviously I have the copy button in my quad system, so I'm gonna copy this object and I'm gonna paste it into my scene here, right? There we go. So this is the, so this is my Vray Fur object. There we go. So let's just say I will delete this guy, and now I'm gonna, I don't know, fur plane. I'm gonna rename this guy, and I will select my fur here. So just keep in mind I'm using default the default Vray Fur here. So I'm gonna select this sphere here. I'm gonna click on my plane. All right, there we go. So I can delete that and leave the fur indicator there somewhere. Doesn't matter. I can change the color if I want to. I mean, it literally doesn't matter, right? So now I'm gonna select my Vray Fur, and I'm gonna apply a more lighter color. So basically I'm gonna get a lot of contrast, right? All right, now really simple, really quick one, right? So this is your viewport display. So as you can see, you can press 2000, you know, and you're gonna see more hair strands in your viewport. Now this is just an indicator, right? This is not gonna represent, you know, the full amount of your hair strands in your viewport. And basically I'm not sure if you can have the same bug, but I have this. If you put 5000, it will crash max. I didn't try this with 4500 or so or whatever, but if I put 4000, it will work. If I will put 5000, it will crash my scene, right? And I tried that like 4 times. I'm not sure this is a Vray bug or a max bug, but anyways, I mean, honestly, you just need 1000. That's more than enough just to see how the hair strands are acting, right? That's about it. All right, so let's just start explaining this a bit, right? And showing some examples. So as you can see, you have a couple of settings here. Nothing too much, nothing too major. Now let's start from the beginning. So the first is going to be the length, obviously, right? So I'm going to put this to 0. There we go. So we're going to get gravity to 0. I'm going to try to explain all of this, right? So length is going to be basically your length, right? So as you can see in the preview, so basically that's going to be your length. Pretty easy to understand. So I'm going to put this to 15 for now. And thickness is going to be your thickness, right? So thickness of the hair strands. So what I mean by that is, for those who don't really cannot imagine that, so basically this is your hair strand, right? There we go. So this is the thickness, right? That area right there. Okay. So at the moment we have 0.2 centimeters thickness, right? So it's 2 millimeters of thickness, right? So the thickness comes from the root. Okay, so the root is on the bottom, right? Now the gravity is really simple to understand. Obviously, as you can see here, if I'm pulling it down, the hair is basically pulling down. If I'm going to F3, as you can see, it's going down, 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 and it's going up, 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 right? So at this point, I'm gonna keep this to 0. Now, another option is called bend. Usually I keep the bend for 0.5 or 1. Honestly, it doesn't matter, right? Because these two settings, gravity and bend, they're kind of, I don't know, they're kind of relying on each other. So if I'm going to put 0, literally my hair strands are going to be completely straight. And if I'm going to go to minus 1000, right, nothing's going to happen. Now look what's going to happen if I'm going to put there to 0.5. Bam, they instantly went down, right? So it's kind of, they're kind of working together quite well. So even if I'm gonna put 1, you know, if I'm gonna put 10, sorry, not minus 10, but the positive number, there we go. And I can go down, down, and you can see how they are bending, right? Either way, they will bend, right? Because the gravity will, you know, bend them. Now look what's gonna happen if I'm gonna use the bend, you know, backwards. You can see that the hair is getting straighter, straighter, and straighter, right? So literally you can play around with the bend or the gravity. Usually keep this to 0.5 or 1, and then obviously you can play with the gravity, right? If you want to, you know, if you want to get something like that, you can, you know, you can put the gravity to, let's just say minus 2 centimeters if you want to, right? And keep the bend, you know, something maybe 0.5, right? So you can do that as well if you want to, right? So the gravity or the bend, you can control both of them. Now another option is going to be taper. So what taper means is basically, and this is gonna correspond to thickness, right? So So I'm going to show an example. So let's just say you have 0.02 centimeters or 0.2 centimeters, doesn't matter, a thickness, right? So that location there, right? And the bottom, right? Now what's going to happen if you're going to put taper from 0 to 1, right? So taper is going to be the top bit, right? So the top bit of your hair strand, and that's the bottom bit, which is the root, right? That's the root. Now if you're going to use a taper of 0.1, this is what's going to happen. Bam, bam, bam. That's the top of your hair strand. So basically it's going to take that vertex, and they're going to weld it together, right? Keep in mind that the hair strands do have thickness, so but obviously I'm just trying to represent this in 2D, right? Just for you two guys to understand this a bit easier, right? So this is what it's called taper. Basically you're taping, you know, you're kind of making this like a pyramid, right? And when you're creating fur, I would always recommend using this at 1 because it's just gonna look a bit more, well, a lot more better actually. Now for whatever reason you want to use a taper of 0, you can, and you know, you can start creating for example you know, rugs, something like that. But at the same time I wouldn't really recommend doing this. I would create a rug like that with maybe Forest Pro or scattering, some scattering tool or whatever. Basically I would create a patch like that or something along those lines, and then I would scatter throughout the rug, right? Because you will not really you know, it's gonna take quite a lot of time to create something like that from Vray Fur, right? So it's not the case with Vray Fur. You can create, you know, things like that, you know, things like that. Basically you can create this quite well, right? That, for example. Okay, so all right, so let's get back to our Vray Fur. So length is going to be the length, the thickness is going to be, you know, 0.2, and keep in mind that the taper is not going to affect the root. So if the root is going to be, for example, 0.2 centimeters, and if you're going to put the taper to 1, right? So at the moment this is 0 here, this is 0, and this is 1, and that's the taper. So if the taper is going to be 1, it's not going to affect the root. The root is going to be completely the same, right? So it's just going to be like a pyramid there. All right, so length, thickness, gravity, bend, taper, right? Now material AD, honestly, I wouldn't talk about this because it's just completely unimportant. But I'm gonna basically, you know, you can always do things like that. Go to the Vray chaos group, sorry, docs chaos group, or just type Vray Fur in Google, and you can find this kind of things, you know, material AD, for example, here, bam. Material ID, assign material ID to get generated hairs. This useful for applying multi-sub-object material to the fur, right? So you can do things like, for example, you know, let's just say, obviously by default this is off, right? Because you're going to be using one material. Now, let's just say you're going to use a couple of Vray Fur's objects on this object here, okay? So for example, I'm going to put this at 1, material ID 1, right? And let's just say I'm going to use a sub-material. Now look, I'm going to show you an example. So I'm going to put 2 Vray materials. One is going to be red. Another one is going to be, I don't know, green, right? And I'm going to use a multi-sub object, double click, set the number, press 2, press OK. Put the red into 1. Put the green into 2, right? And let's just say I will select my plane again, right? And I will apply another Vray Fur, right? And with that Vray Fur, what I need to do is basically change, for example, the length to 17, right? Just to put another variation, like, and maybe 0.5, so less, you know, rare or whatever. And what else can we change? Maybe we can change the bend to 1, for example. There we go. And let's just say the other one, we can change the bend to 0, maybe completely straight, or 0.1, something like that, right? So we have different hair strands and different Vray Furs, right? So let's just say this is going to be our Vray Fur 1, which is using material AD 1, and this is going to be material AD 2, right? Now look what's going to happen here. So I don't need to select each and every one. You know, I can select both of them, right? Both Vray Fur materials, so both hairs, and I can apply this multi-sub material. Bam, there we go. So I don't need to go here and select, you know, you can have 5 different materials, but you will be only to apply, you know, you can only apply, you know, one multi-sub material and you can get different effects, right? So for example, if I'm gonna go and press render, this is what I'm getting. So now, for example, the first one that has material ID 1 is taking the material 1 and the other one is taking the material 2, right? And you can obviously create, you know, a couple of those forest, sorry, not forest, but Vray Fur objects, right? So as you can see, that's how it's working, right? And it's a pretty cool effect. You know, you can mix and match whatever you want to do there, you know. So in this case, we will delete this Vray Fur and we're gonna keep this one. So let me just bend it back a bit. There we go. So so length, thickness, gravity, bend, taper, material ID, right? So material ID, we're gonna keep this to by default, which is gonna be 0 and unchecked. So now if I'm gonna render this out, you can see the by the way, I want to apply a lighter there we go. There we go. So that's going to be fine, right? So let me just increase the rendering speed a bit because I'm just going to increase this noise threshold to a higher number, which is going to be 2.5. So it's going to be a bit faster to render. So obviously, if you are curious, my CPU speed is, if you're going to go to performance, by the way, I'm on Windows 10 64-bit Pro. So my CPU speed is 3000 gigahertz and I'm using 10 cores, 20 threads, right? So it's a decent CPU. It's honestly, it's kind of a potato CPU, but it does do the job. Now for the RAM, I have 128 gigs of RAM. That's more than enough. And for the GPU, I have NVIDIA Titan X Pascal. So those two components here are quite fast, but the CPU, it is quite slow at the moment. But obviously, if you know how to optimize V-Ray settings, you can get quite nice rendering speeds. So there you go. So I'm rendering this now in interactive mode, and let's just move to another setting, which is going to be geometric detail. So as you can see, it says here knots, right? So if I'm going to put this to 2 knots, so what's going to happen is basically, so what is a knot? Basically, it's like a segment, right? It's like a detail in your hair strand. So I'm gonna try to show you an example. So I'm gonna remove this layer here and I'm gonna apply another layer. And I will show you a hair strand, right? So let's just say this is a hair strand, like with thickness, right? And what is a knot is basically, so for example, let me just go to my, so basically it's a detail, right? So let me put this to 400 maybe. There we go. So look what's gonna happen if I'm gonna put bend, right? Look what's gonna happen if I'm gonna put 5, 8. So you see how more segments the hair is getting, right? So basically you're applying detail in that one hair strand, right? So look what's gonna happen if I'm gonna put 2, 3. So as you can see, I just added 3. And what 3 means is basically it's not 3 in the middle, right? So 3 in total. So that's going to be 1 segment, 2nd segment, and the 3rd segment, right? So 1, 2, 3. And obviously, if you're going to put 4, it's going to basically put, it's going to be here, 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 and there. Ignore the other one, right? And etc, etc. Basically, you know, you don't need to understand this, honestly. It's just basically putting more segments into your hair strand, right? So let's just say default is 8. And keep in mind this, if you're going to use 2, 1, or whatever, it's going to take less RAM. It will be a bit faster to render. Just keep that in mind. Obviously, it's going to look a bit more worse, but you know, it is what it is. By default, it's 8, works really well. Unless you want to go lower, unless you're rendering this from far away, right? And you're not gonna see that detail, so you can't put to 4, 5, or whatever, right? But at this moment, we're gonna use 8, okay? All right, now, level of detail. Actually, I never use this, all right? I never use this, but I will show you how does it work. And actually, if you go to, where is it? level of detail. There you go. So level of detail when enabled, V-Ray will generate less fur geometry for parts that seen which are far away from the camera, right? So let's just say, you know, if I'm gonna put 1000, and keep in mind, if I'm gonna go to my top view, let me just save this in for now. So this is my camera. I'm gonna disable grid, and I'm gonna put object properties, see, nope, display as a box. There we go. So as you can see here, we have a camera and we have our plane, obviously, and that distance is going to be from the camera. So how can you measure the distance? Is basically go here, put the tape and drag it somewhere from the camera, and obviously you will see the distance, right? And the distance is showing over there. So if I'm dragging there, you can see that's 188 centimeters. That's going to be the full length to the end is going to be 430, 420, something like that, right? And you can delete it now. So let's just say, you know, 50 or whatever, but obviously we're going to be rendering this with interactive mode. There we go. So I'm going to press interactive mode. There we go. And what I'm going to do now here is basically put a lesser of a number. There we go. Maybe 05. There we go. So it's going to be a bit faster to render. There we go. So these are our hair strands, and obviously that's the bottom plane. And you can see how it's working. Now, obviously by default this is off, right? So now I'm going to put level of detail to on, okay? And what we're going to do here is we're going to put 50 centimeters, right? So we did put 50 centimeters. I'm going to put this to 0. So this rate is basically it's like a gradient of detail, right? So we can specify literally from where to, you know, start removing the hair strands. So for example, I'm going to put 150 centimeters. You can see that it's the radius of 150 from your camera, right? Now, sorry, it's not the radius. So in the back, you're not going to see anything, but basically it's the distance from the camera. So now look what's going to happen. Let me just put this to 10 for now. There we go. So let's just say I'm going to increase this to 180. So see how it's growing, right? So 200. There we go. So 250. There we go. And we're growing, and we are growing. So there we go. So now look what's going to happen if I'm going to put a rate to 50 centimeters, for example. Bam. Now you see that after this threshold there, so the threshold is 200, right? This is a true 200. Now from 200, so after 200, if I'm going to increase this number, it will start increasing, sorry, it will start showing me the lower detail information. So let's just say I'm going to put 5 centimeters, right? So now you can see that it's starting to apply a really, you know, thick and, you know, less and less. So if you're going to go to the rate, specifies the rate at which the detail adjustment is applied, starting from the distance specified in the start distance parameter, right? So V-Ray decreases the density and increases the thickness of the strands by a factor of 2 every n units of space specified by blah 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 blah, right? So basically the best thing is to test it out, right? So obviously you can see that V-Ray is applying a lot less detail. It kind of looks like a, I don't know, World of Worms or War of Worms or something like that. Anyways, but yeah, you know what I mean, right? So you're basically decreasing the detail, and obviously it's going to be faster to render and blah, 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 right? So let's just say I'm going to put this to 1. So now you can see how big they are getting. So 0.5. So this is what you're getting now, okay? And let's just say I'm going to put this to 10, 50, and you can see how subtle the transition is starting from that point there, right? So 200 centimeters was somewhere there, right? So after those 200 centimeters, so before those 200 centimeters, all of this is going to be basically taken, all of your settings are going to be taken into consideration properly, right? Now after those 200 centimeters, V-Ray is going to start basically optimizing further strands. So as you can see, the strands are getting thicker and thicker and with less detail and all that kind of stuff, right? So if I'm going to put this to you know, 200, you know, that detail is going to be, you know, it's going to be like a lot more smoother transition, right? So just keep that in mind, okay? So the higher you're gonna go, the less of a transition is gonna be. Basically, it's gonna be a really smooth and long transition, right? Now, if I'm gonna put this to 1, obviously you can see what I'm getting, right? The transition is literally almost here, right? So that's massive, and that's literally just a massive spheres there. Okay, so I hope this made sense. So obviously the higher you're gonna go, the softer the transition, and the further on it's gonna start showing off. So I hope this made sense. Obviously I never use this. Why should I mean, unless you really need to for whatever reason. But I have 128 gigs of RAM. That's literally for me to render a Vray Fur, and I can use quite high numbers, and it's not a big of a deal. So I'm gonna click that off, and this is what we're getting here now. So now let's move to variation. Obviously variation makes a complete sense. Basically it's just a random variation. It's just adding a variation to your hair strands, right? So for example, direction, so Z, Y, and X directions, right? I mean any direction, right? So you can randomize the directions. You can see that how it's it's straight, completely straight. Now you're randomizing it a bit, right? So there we go. So you can put the length as well, variation. So some hairs are gonna be a bit shorter, some of them are gonna be a bit longer than the other ones, right? So they're not gonna be all the same. Okay, if you're gonna put this to 0, they're all gonna be completely the same length. Okay, if you're gonna put this to 2 or 3, so one can be, for example, 10 centimeters, another one is gonna be 8 centimeters, another one 5, and etc, right? Now by the way, it's not gonna overtake the 10 centimeters, so it's gonna go below, right? So the randomization is gonna happen below your 10 centimeters. Just keep that in mind. So that's the direction. So obviously where is gonna be directing, right? Which in which direction is gonna look. Now the length is gonna be obviously your length. The thickness is gonna be your thickness, which is gonna be starting from the root, because we're using the taper at 0 at the moment, by the way. So we can use this at 1. So there you go. This is what we're getting. So let me just put the thickness a bit thicker, maybe. Obviously just for tutorial purposes, right? So there we go. So we have a thick root, and we have a taper at 1, right? So it's like a kind of like a pyramid, right? And obviously you can see those segments, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 segments in total, and we have 8 segments there. Now thickness variation, gravity variation, and curl variation. Now this is really important. I'm gonna put this to maybe 13. There we go. And bend 2.5 maybe. There we go. So now the curl variation, so all of these are working fine. Okay, keep that in mind. Now the curl variation, it was working before, I remember, but now if you're gonna put this to 1, it's not gonna work. Now for curl to work, what you need to do is, don't get me wrong, it is working, but I'm just gonna try to make a point here how it's working, right? So if you want to use the curl variation, you have to apply there the tab, it's called curl. So when you're gonna apply curl, right, now the curl is gonna be affected, right? So for example, if I'm gonna put 1, so you can see how the hair strand is starting to twist, right? And number of curls, let's just say 2. So this is what you're getting now, as you can see here. Okay, and let's just say put 5. This is what you're getting now. And to get a nice curl, what you need to do is implement more segments. There we go. So the more segments you're gonna have, the better the curl is gonna have. Become, right? So let's just say put to 3, put to 1. Well, let's just say something like that. So you can see a nice preview on your viewport, right? Now this curl variation, it's gonna start working. So 0, it's gonna basically all of them are gonna be the same. 1 is gonna be a bit more curled, another one is gonna be less curled, and for example, another one is gonna less numbers of curls and etc. So only then the curl variation is gonna start working, right? So you can, I would recommend using this I would recommend using these variations from point 2 to 0.5. I think that's more than enough. If you're gonna use at 1, that's gonna be a bit too drastic. So for whatever reason you want to create, you know, curly rug or something like that, you know, please do try to use the curl variation and obviously check this curl on. So I'm gonna put it off because I don't really want to use it at the moment. And now we're gonna use to distribution. So distribution is quite easy to understand, and I'm gonna try to explain this as easy as possible. So what does it mean face? Okay. So look, so now I have per face is gonna be 1 strand, right? But when you look at it, you see, you think that it's a face, right? The 1 polygon. This is, by the way, 1 polygon, a quad, right? But you can see that you have 2 hair strands on this polygon, on this face. Well, it's not a face basically. What does it mean? A face is basically, if you go to your plane, let's just say you put to mesh, you convert it to mesh, right click mesh, and that's your face. So as you can see, and you click, that's 1 face, that's another face. So polygon is made from 2 faces, right? So if I'm gonna press Ctrl A, you're gonna start seeing this punctual line in the middle of the polygon, right? So you can see that there. So that's another face, that's another face, 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 right? There we go. So so basically you're gonna get 1 hair strand per face, okay? I hope that made sense. So I'm gonna click this to poly again, right? So now I have polygons, right? So I can select the 1 poly, so I don't have any more faces here. But obviously just keep in mind, right? Polygon is kind of made from 2 faces, right? So 2 triangles, right? All right, so the next thing is I'm gonna select my Vray Fur again. And let's just say I'm gonna put, you know, 2, 4, 5, you know, I don't know, 50, bam, and let's just say 200, boom. And, you know, you put more and more, you know, you can get, you know, quite a lot of, quite a big number there. Now, really important, what I'm gonna point out here is, you know, try to digest this as fast as possible, but it really depends what you're trying to achieve here, obviously, but maybe in some specific situations you will want to use a face. But how face is working is literally saying is distribution is going to be implemented per face. Keep that in mind, right? So now look what's going to happen. So if you have an even topology, which is for example here, right? So you can see that you have a perfectly nice quad, or for example, you would have, you know, evenly tessellated object, which is for example came from, let's just say, Marvelous Designer. You create a cloth, and you know that cloth came in completely in the same topology, right? So all the triangles are completely the same, right? So in that case, you can easily use the face, sorry, the where is it, per face distribution, right? Now I'm gonna go to my camera, sorry, there we go. Let me just restart this for now. There we go. So keep that in mind. So now look what's gonna happen if I'm gonna basically select my plane, and I'm gonna try to push where is it, Pro Optimizer, bam, right? So now look what's gonna happen if I'm gonna calculate, right? There we go. And I'm gonna drop this to 5%. Maybe not, maybe that's a bit too much. 20%, 50. There we go. So as you can see, it does, the topology is kind of, you know, weird and all of that kind of stuff. So let's just say 30. There we go. So as you can see, that's gonna be your face, right? So, you know, if I'm gonna basically put this to mesh and put the face, obviously that's gonna be 1 face, another face, another face. But keep in mind that some faces can become bigger. So I'm gonna delete it. So some faces can become bigger. So I can even do this. So let's just say I will select that, delete, that, that, and that. So I have here a massive face, or two faces, whatever, right? So I have one massive polygon, and there I have a smaller polygon or two faces, right? Now you can see how the distribution is working, I mean, differently, right? So I have less, less hair strands here. Well, I have the same amount of hair strands, but the thing is they're populated on a bigger area, okay? And these hair strands are populated, let's just say I have 100 hair strands here and 100 there, but this is a massive space area and this is a small space area. So obviously those hairs are gonna be chucked closer to each other into that small area, right? Now look what's gonna happen if I'm gonna create this as a per area, right? So let's just say I'm gonna put this to 01, right? So now you can see that the distribution is completely even. Now what's happening with per area is basically what Vray is saying is per area is going to be per your scene unit square, per square of your scene unit, right? So for example, I'm working in centimeters, so it's going to be per square. So for example, 1 hair strands or whatever it is, right, per 1 square centimeter. Or if you're working in meters, it's going to be, that amount of hairs per square meter and all of that kind of stuff. And it does say here, so where is it? There we go. So per area specifies the number of strands per square scene unit. For example, if the system units are in meters, the parameter specifies the desired number of strands per square meter, blah, 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 right? So for example, if I'm working in centimeters, so that's going to be per square centimeter. Now this number here, it's, if I'm going to go 01, by the way, let me just go back a bit. I want to put back the polygons again. There we go. There we go. So it's even now, right? So I'm going to select my Vray Fur again, and I'm going to choose per area. So let's just say I'm going to put 1, and I'm going to use per area, and I'm going to put 01. So per face, per area. I cannot go lower than that. All right, so there we go. So if I'm going to choose per face 1, that's going to be the result. If I'm going to choose per area, that's going to be literally the same result, right? So if I'm going to put this to 001, sorry, 001, so you're going to get more and more and more and more and more. Now, this is really important. Don't look at the numbers. That's literally doesn't matter, right? As long as you're happy with the looks. Obviously I'm gonna go here maybe with 50, right? Obviously it's gonna take a while to render now, but to obviously calculate, but keep in mind that so sorry, it's taking a bit it's not supported. Are you guys joking? Obviously that number is way too big, right? So let's just say I'm gonna put this to 2. Okay, that's a lot of hairs there, right? So I'm gonna put this to 1. So as you can see, this is quite sensitive, right? So keep that in mind. But I will recommend using per area because it's just gonna basically be better. If you're not gonna have an even topology, per area is gonna work perfectly fine, right? But just be careful with the numbers. Go from 0 and try to increase that by 0.2 and go up and see how your computer is gonna handle it, right? Let me just put this to 1000 for now. There we go. And so by the way, this is not gonna affect your hair strands in the render. This is only for the preview, right? Just to see how the hair strand is looking. All right, let's move on. So per area, right? Also keep that in mind that per face, it's not gonna, well, actually it will work with animations, but how Vray says how to work with animations. So for example, you're rendering an animation and on the 2nd frame or on the 3rd frame, your hair strands are gonna change locations or something is gonna go a bit differently, right? So basically what you can do here is per area. When you choose per area, what you can do is basically by default lock to surface is on, ignore scale is on as well. and you can choose a reference frame, which is going to be, let's just say 0 or whatever. So let's just say the Vray Fur is going to take the reference from frame number 0, and it's going to stay always the same, right? So on the next frame, it's going to be basically basically seeing that frame 0 as a reference, and it's going to take all of that into consideration, and the hair strands are not going to basically change any location, right? So so if you go here per frame, a reference frame, right? So obviously it says a lot about only from this one, reference frame. When distribution perimeter is set to per area, this specifies the frame at which the source object is captured to calculate the face area, right? The captured data will be used throughout the entire animation to ensure the number of strands for a given face remains constant during animation. So it's kind of, honestly, if you're rendering animation with your Vray Fur, literally just put the number there and just keep everything here by default, and reference frame, you can put it to 0, right? Because let's just say at 0, the hair or whatever, it's it's working at that stage, and it will be working throughout your whole animation. So it's just a reference frame, basically. That's why V-Ray is obviously, because obviously sometimes you can get different distributions a bit on each and every frame, and you can get flickering. So basically this will help avoid flickering and all of that kind of stuff, but obviously you can still get flickering if you're using really bad rendering settings, right, for animations. And so this parameter here, which is called a reference frame, is just for mostly for animations. For stills, it doesn't matter, right? So I'm gonna use this at 0.02, and if you want to read about it a bit more about this, and try to obviously test it out on animations if you want to. Honestly, I'm trying to avoid fur objects as much as possible, especially in animations, because it does take a lot of time to render even on a powerful machine, and you don't want to make it look like crap, so you kind of cranking the numbers up quite well, right? So obviously check out the settings if you need them, but like I said, this is a reference frame, and that's how it should work. Now, I didn't test it out with animations. Like I said, I'm trying to avoid Vray Furs as much as possible. And I'm not talking about Vray Furs, I'm talking about furs in general, because it does take quite a long time to render, right? So unless I have the time, so yeah, I might create a fur material, right? Now let's move. Let me just check something. Okay, okay, that's fine. So all right, let's move to another area, which is going to be the placement, and this is really easy. So entire object, what it's mean is going to distribute your hair strands throughout your entire object. So in this case, our entire object is our plane, right? So now the other one is called, let me just go down, there we go. The other object is called selected faces. Now you don't need to you can basically just select your plane. You can go to poly, right, or mesh, doesn't matter. I would recommend poly, right? So let's just say I'm gonna select that poly there, and let me just recalculate this. There we go. Okay, that's a bit weird, because Vray should render that out. So as you can see, obviously in the viewport, how it's working. So if I'm gonna apply, select couple of faces or polygons, well, that doesn't matter. Basically that's how this gonna scatter, right? So if I'm gonna select this now, if I'm gonna recalculate, and that's going to basically leave selected, because that's how you selected it. And let's just say you want to select that and that maybe. I'm going to recalculate that really quickly. Bam, there you go. So this is how you're gonna get. Now there is another option called where is it, material AD, right? So keep in mind that everything now is material is at material ID 1, right? So now look what I can do here. Now I can go here on my plane and I can press polygon, and let's just say I'm gonna put that, and that at material set ID. So I'm gonna put this to 2 and press enter. There we go. So now look what's happening. I'm not getting any hair distribution on the material AD2, which is the AD2. It has, this poly has AD2, 2, and 2. These ones are 1, right? And all right, so let's just say I want to change that. Let's just say I want to put this to 2. Bam. So I'm switching now, right? So obviously the interactive is updating itself, because I think that's it didn't work with the other one. With the selected faces, but it does work with this one. So I'm gonna put this to 2, 1, 2, 1, and let's just say you would create 2 different Vray Furs, right? And you will apply both of them on the same plane. The one, so let's just say I will put this guy as a copy, right? And I'm gonna select this plane there, and I will put this at 2, and I will put this at, let's just say 0.9 and maybe 20. There you go. So this is what you can do, right? So you can apply different those and you can manipulate in whatever way. Let's just say you want to create a shape or something like that, or write your name or something. I mean, you know, you can do whatever you want, right? I mean, you can put the per face, per area, and all that kind of stuff. And obviously we're gonna move to maps just in a sec. So I'm gonna delete that, and I'm gonna select my Vray Fur. There we go. And I will do nothing. All right, so we're entire object. There we go. So we're gonna put this to entire object for now, and so I hope that made sense. Now, mapping coordinates, I never use this. Don't even bother using this. I mean, if you wanna, you know, try to experiment with this, please do. But generate W coordinates in general, all mapping. This is a real world mapping, I think, or something like that. In general, all mapping coordinates are taken from the base object. So you already have all the mapping on the hair strands. It's already done. They're all unwrapped and everything is Gucci, right? Now, however, the W mapping coordinate can be modified to represent the offset along their hair strands, blah, blah, blah. When this option is enabled, with coordinates is offset along the hair strand. 0 is the strand base and the 1 is the tip, right? The U and the V coordinates are still taken from the base object. So as you can see, this is already unwrapped and everything is good. You don't need to change anything, and I wouldn't recommend changing anything there, because, you know, unless you're I don't know, a hairstylist and you're doing some really crazy shit there basically. So you know, you can try to play around with this, but I'm not gonna be obviously showing this and trying to show something that it's not that is completely unimportant, right? So ignore the mapping, keep this at default. I'm not even sure where you're gonna use this, but for creating a fur material or whatever, you are kind of good with all of these settings and these settings. You don't really need to use this unless you need to somehow offset or use a different channel to some, I don't know, for whatever reason you need to use this, you know, read about it in the docs and maybe it will help you. Obviously Vray is not even showing any examples. So in general, mapping coordinates are taking it. So in general, that they're saying all mapping is taken from the base object and blah, 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 and everything is already done. But unless you want to do some crazy stuff, you know, you can have some fun, right? So I don't want to have any fun with this one, and I don't see any importance of using it. But let's just say some professionals in Vray Fur or whatever, you know, want to use this, please do, right? Now the curl one I already showed you. It works quite well with the curl variation, right? So just obviously be careful, don't over exaggerate this. And dynamic tessellation basically by default is off at this point, but what it does is basically it's like a displacement map, right? So so you have this tessellation in the displacement, which is default displacement, and that's basically using the edge length. So it's kind of, you know, if you're using a lower number, by default it's 4 by the way here. So if you're using 1, you're gonna basically get more detail from your displacement, right? So there's gonna be a more detailed and more refined displacement. Thus it's gonna take more RAM, your physical RAM, and thus is gonna take longer to render. Really simple. If you're gonna go up, basically the tessellation. So what does it mean? Tessellation is basically, look, so let's just say you have a hair strand, right? And let's just say you're gonna use a tessellation of 4 pixels, or sorry, what is that, centimeters, or okay, so pixels, so that will be pixels. So let's just say, you know, you have a pixel, whatever, right? So basically 4 pixels, so that's the tessellation, right? And that should be 4 by 4 or whatever, right? That's the matter. But just keep that in mind, that the higher number you're gonna go, the less segments or tessellation you're gonna get, right? So the lower number you're gonna go, the more your object is gonna be tessellated and the more detail it's gonna have, right? And if you're gonna go to your where is it, does it even say here? It doesn't even have this one, but I think this is a new feature, so let me just quickly double check that for you. Dynamic tessellation, right? So dynamic tessellation. Here I'm just writing whatever. Sorry guys, tessellation. Nope, tessellation. I didn't even type Vray. Come on. Okay, so there is something on Maya. So if I type dynamic tessellation, yeah, there you go, something like that. So when enabled, VRDynamic changes the subdivision of the hair based on the distance to the camera. I mean, that's pretty cool. This means that the strands that are closer to the camera are subdivided more times than strands that are far away. This allows for better memory utilization. So, you know, check it out. So for example, basically what they're trying to say here, if I'm gonna enable this, and if I'm gonna put, actually they're not specifying the distance, which is a bit weird. So I'm not sure, you know, how far away my hair strands have to be to, you know, to get less detail, because we did you know, play around with level of detail, which is a completely different thing, right? So by the way, use that at 8, don't use at 20, because that's a bit overkill unless you're using a lot of curls. But let's just say I'm gonna put this to 8 or 50. So okay, so I do get I think it's some kind of like a threshold or something like that, but basically you're starting to see that you're getting less and less detail, right? So you can even put use this with the, you know, with your Vray Fur if you want to, right? If you have, you know, not a lot of RAM or whatever, so as you can see, you have literally 2 segments there, 1 and 2, right? Now in here you have more segments, and this is like a threshold, right? So if I'm gonna put this to 25 and half, so I'm gonna get now there 3 segments, and I should get more here. Let's just say I'm gonna put 5. So as you can see, this is how it works, right? So it's kind of sweet. So obviously here you're gonna get less, and let's just say 10, maybe more than that, 25, 20, sorry, there we go. So it's, yeah, so there we go. So this is some kind of like a threshold, obviously, right? So, you know, for better memory utilization, you know, try to play around with this, or try to play around with even the, you know, the knot number, or the level of detail, right? It really depends what results are you going to be achieving there, right? But like I said, always try to achieve the most realistic results as possible, even if the rendering is going to take 2 hours more. So edge length, let's just say we're going to use this at off. We're not going to use this because I don't have a problem with RAM, so I'm Gucci. All right, so I think all of these make, honestly, when you look at them, they're quite easy to use, right? I mean, everything is quite straightforward. You just need to obviously test it out and see how it looks. All right, let's move to another thing, which is going to be maps, which is actually going to be the last one, right? So obviously the viewport, it's kind of, it's not useless, but it's just for previewing the hair strands in your viewport. Automatic update, manual update, you can just press the button, it will manually update itself, right? You don't really need to click maybe to refresh interactive rendering, whatever. So bend direction map. Now this is really important. Base map channel, ignore that for now. This is a map channel basically, okay? For example, you can use if you go to your material editor, maybe you're gonna apply two different fur modifiers or something like that for whatever reason, or for whatever complex stuff you're doing there. But let's just say you have a bitmap, right? Images, do I have a bitmap? Let's just say I have a bitmap like this. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? It's just a Marvelous Diner bitmap. So let's just say the map channel is gonna be 2, right? And you're gonna apply this here, right? And this map channel is gonna be at 2, so you should use this at 2 as well, right? So that's the only way it's gonna start working, right? But in general, I will recommend using 1 at the moment. So for example, if I'm gonna apply this at actually this is okay, so I don't want to mix you up too fast, so let me just show this for you. Right now, bend direction, obviously you understand what is bend, right? So basically the hair strand is gonna bend. Initial direction, so basically where the hair is gonna start looking initially, right? So for example, the hair is gonna basically start looking to the left, right, or whatever direction, right? So another one is length, thickness, gravity, bend, density. So how dense, how many hair strands do you have in that one place, and curl map, right? And now check another thing. They're saying in the brackets, they're saying RGB, RGB, and here says mono, 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 and that should be mono as well. Okay. Now, RGB means red, green, and blue. So basically you can apply, and I'm not just saying red, green, and blue. I'm just saying that it's going to be it will take into consideration a colorful map. And the thing is that the colorful map is gonna be basically taken into consideration. So what I'm trying to explain here is, so let's just say I will create you guys an example, okay? So let's just say I'm gonna create a gradient ramp, right? Which is obviously, let me just stop this for now. Whoops, did it crash? I hope that it didn't crash. All right, I cannot do anything. Cancel, cancel, cancel. Sorry about that, guys. Sometimes you get these kind of things, right? So, all right, so let me create a gradient ramp, right? And let me create a couple of colors. So let's just say this is gonna be red. Now I'm gonna copy this, right click, copy, select here another one. And sorry guys, we're just gonna paste this, and I'm gonna put this color there, and I'm gonna put this as a blue. Okay, and I'm gonna copy this color, and I'm gonna put it here, double click, oh sorry, not double click, but I just want to paste it there, and do another color, and I'm gonna put this as a green color. There we go. And whoops, let me just delete this and move this here somewhere, copy and paste it there. So I have red, blue, and green, right? Doesn't matter which way it is. Now look what's gonna happen if I'm gonna apply this onto so first of all, if I'm gonna apply this in here, right? So I'm gonna put this here. So by the way, not to confuse you, I will disable all of those, right? So because they are gonna be disabled, we're using just we're playing around just with the bend now, right? All right, so now you are seeing how it's bending, right? So but the thing is, you cannot really preview where the colors are, right? So to do this in the best way and to check it out, basically what you need to do is, you can apply this here and apply on that plane right here. There we go. Now now you can see that this is blue, this is red, this is green, right? So let me select our hair strands here, and that's the bend modifier, right? So let's put this to 0, and bend 1, 0.5. Let's just test it out a bit. Gravity is gonna be maybe 5 or so for now. All right, so so we have the bend direction here, and we're gonna start rendering it. And now you can see how it's working, right? So as you can see, the bluish color, it's bending to the what in this case to opposite to the X, right? The red one is bending somewhere to the X, and the green one is bending to the Y, right? So and now look what's gonna happen if I will try to increase the lightness of it. So for example, I can do even this. Either I can do it from output, so increasing the output, so making it lighter basically, but I wouldn't play with this one. I usually plug a color correction, right? And I will drag this into there, right, as an instance, and I will put this as advanced and maybe 4. All right, so the colors are gonna get lighter and lighter. 50. There you go. So the colors are changing, as you can see a bit, right? So now look what's happening. Obviously, all of these colors are starting to work in a different way, obviously. Now, keep in mind that the white color is going to be completely neutral, right? So basically, there's not going to be any bend. So this color is not completely white, just so you know. So if you want to check the color, you can go here, Vray color, and you can just, pick the color and see what the color is. So it's not completely white, it has some greenish tint onto it, and etc, right? So as you can see, it's not completely white. The white color should be something like that, right? But it's not completely white. So so as you can see how the hair strands are changing, right? So the bending direction, so that's completely blue, that's completely red, etc, etc. Now if I'm gonna desaturate this completely, right, you can see that the hair strands are going, let me just put this to 0, and you can see that if I desaturate them, they're going up, right? Because the color is becoming whitish and whitish and whitish and whitish, right? And now obviously the colors are really saturated. Now keep in mind this, the darker the color, the more saturated the color, well actually the more saturated and the darker, the more contrasty the color is, the stronger effect you're gonna get. So obviously you saw that the white color basically is just not bending at all. Okay, so this is how this thing is working. So it's taking into consideration each and every color, right? So black, white, red, green, blue, purple, whatever color you have, it will give you different bending results. And that's going to be completely the same with the other modifier, which is, we're going to exclude the bend now, so we don't have any bend now. So now we're going to put initial direction map. So now look what's going to happen if we're going to put this to initial direction. Bam, there we go, right? So as you can see, the hair is initially from the root, right? Literally this is starting from the root, not as a bend, but from the root, right? So the root is instantly pointing to the left and a bit to the right and all that kind of stuff, right? So the red is pointing, all of them are pointing mostly to well, not mostly, but all of them are, the red color is pointing to the X. The blue is pointing, honestly hard to understand, but it looks like it's pointing to the Z axis or something like that. It's kind of a mix, because it's maybe this color is not completely blue, and this color is pointing somewhere to the Y. Okay, so because this is not a completely, so obviously we can change the colors a bit. So for example, we can change this to an aqua color or something like that, and obviously the direction will change as well. So as you can see, this is going straight, and these are bending a bit to the opposite to the X, and you can get really different effects, right? So just keep that in mind, right? So if I'm gonna put this as a color correction and completely desaturate this, right? Literally it's gonna be the same thing. Everyone is gonna be pointing kind of in the same direction into up, right? Because we don't have any, any massive gravity down. So this is how these are working. So bend is gonna take color into consideration, and initial direction is gonna take color into consideration as well. So each and every color is gonna give you a bit of a different effects. So now how to experiment with this, if you have a map or whatever, just first create a dummy scene, create a plane or something like that, and put your map in, and just check it out how those colors are working with the fur, right? So you don't want any fur strands pointing completely down, right? So below your geometry piece, right? So they're kind of need to point out somewhere, but they don't need to point out completely down, right? So you want to see your hair strands, right? So if you want to adjust it, just plug into color correction, drag it to there, and just apply some gamma and contrast up and down, and you can do whatever you want to do with those maps, right? So let me just disable this initial direction for now. So this is what we're getting here. Now we're gonna apply the same dark map, okay, because we already finished with the colors. Now look what's gonna happen if I'm gonna go to my Vray Fur, and I'm gonna go to, let's just say, a checker map, right? Oh, by the way, I wanted to test one thing that I forgot to do, and it's just for myself as well. I'm not sure if it's gonna work, but let's just try it out. So let's just say I want that blue color there again, and let's just say I will select this and I will select the band. There we go. So everything is working, right? Now let's just say I'm going to put this to map channel 2. Okay, so map channel 2 literally changed my color, which is a bit weird. All right, so if I'm going to put 2, basically it's not working at all. So if I'm going to put this at 2, all right, this is a bit weird. I thought it is gonna work as I thought, but I'm gonna play around with this a bit more later on. So if I'm gonna put this to 1, obviously it is working. Yeah, I thought it's gonna work in a bit of a different way. So base map channel, I'm just curious, sorry guys, base map channel, where is it? So some of the texture maps represent vectors in texture space, where the x and y directions are derived from the u and the... Okay, so you're not gonna use this. Just to be fair, you're not gonna use this, okay? So leave this at 1. Don't overcomplicate things, because Vray Fur is really simple, and that's how it should be. All right, so if you want to do something, something like this, please do, but like I said, don't overcomplicate this. This is really simple to set up. It's literally a couple of seconds, maybe a minute. Obviously I'm explaining everything, trying to explain and show everything to you how it works, but like I said, you're not gonna use this. Just keep it simple, and as much, as simple as possible it gets. It will be easier for you to save time, rendering time, and all that kind of stuff, right? So some of the texture maps represent vectors in texture space. Okay, so just keep this for later on if you will really need to, right? So I would definitely recommend, if you wanna, play around later on, do it. But like I said, don't even try it for now. Just, try to learn the basics and what I'm gonna show you here. So this is obviously not that important for us at this moment. So I will delete this guy and I will apply our where is it? There we go. So I will apply this material on our plane, and the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna check out our Vray Fur, and we're gonna move to length map. So length map is gonna be really easy to understand. So let's just say I'm gonna put a checker, right? And I'm going to put this to 5 and 5. Now to see how the checker is working is really easy. You just apply that there, and obviously you're going to see, you know, where is the black and where is the white, right? So now look what's going to happen if I'm going to drag this map. By the way, you have to drag not the V-Ray, you have to drag the bitmap, right? So length mono, so black and white. It's only going to take into consideration the desaturated colors, right? So the black and whites, or gray or grayer, or less grayer, or, you know, less white, or whatever you want to call it, right? So white is going to be the full length of your length here, which is going to be 13. Now, you know, if I'm going to put something, you know, grayish, oh sorry, wrong color, so black, so let's just say I'm going to increase this color a bit. Now you can see how it started to grow, right? There you go. So you have these little nice cute hair strands there, and you have these long ones which are 13 centimeters. Now if I'm going to change that color to a, you know, lighter one, obviously it's going to grow, right? So that's how obviously this is working, and it's really easy, right? Even if you're going to apply a cellular map, right? So obviously you have let's just say I'm gonna put this to black, right? So this is what you're gonna get, and let's just say you're gonna put there, and so you're gonna get some randomization in your hair, right? In your length, and obviously you can do that with the length variation and all that kind of stuff. So all right, so let's just ignore that. So just clear that guy, and so let's just say now length, and now thickness. So let's just apply thickness, and let's just put this let's just put this to a drastic test, obviously. So thickness black, and we're gonna move thickness to instance. There we go. So thickness map mono. Okay, so as you can see, the thickness here is the thickest one, and this is taking from the 0.5, right? So if I'm gonna put 1, it's gonna be thicker. And now if I'm gonna go to this color, which is the black one, right? So it's killing the thickness completely. And now I'm gonna put this to something like that. So now look how thin, well, obviously it's thicker now because you can see that in the renderer now, but these are the most thickest ones, and that's the number that they're using. And this one is maybe using 0.1 or something like that, right? So this is how it's working. Let's move to another one, which is gonna be our gravity map. So literally the same thing, gravity map. There we go, stand, and I will apply this guy, and let's just say I'm gonna put this pull this to black. There we go, and the white is gonna be up, the black is gonna be the strongest gravity, and the gravity is gonna be pulling from obviously this number here. So the black is gonna be, let's just say -5, right? So the black is going to be -5, and the white sorry, or maybe vice versa, I cannot remember now. Okay, so the black is I think the black is going to be so it's killing the effect. So the black should be killing the effect, so no gravity at all, it's just applying the bend. 0.3, and the white one should be applying the full gravity, which is 1.5. So okay, there you go. So we needed to apply a all right, so just keep that in mind, that the white color is going to be the strongest effect, the black color is literally no effect, right? And just keep that in mind, right? All right, so let's move to the band. So literally I'm not sure if I need to show this, but the band map mono is going to be the same thing. So if you're going to apply this to the band instance, you know, the band is going to be the most extreme ones on the white colors, and no bend at all on the black colors. And density as well. So if I'm going to apply this, or just literally drag that as an instance, so density, if I'm going to apply this, obviously the white is going to be the most dense, which is going to be using this number. And if I'm going to apply obviously a lighter color here, obviously the density will increase you know, bit by bit, as you can see here, right? So let's just put this to black for now. There you go. And the curl map obviously is gonna work only when you're gonna have where is it? Do we have anything there? No. So the gravity, let's put this to 0 for now. So the curl is only gonna work, as I remember, if you're gonna be applying a curl modifier, right? So, well, it's not a modifier, it's just basically check that out, checking this checkbox on. So and that's the curl map basically. So the black it's not gonna affect any curliness, right? So it's not gonna basically apply any curliness, and the white color will apply the full effect of your curl tab here, right? So, and obviously don't forget the curl variation as well. And that's it, and that's the viewport display. So as you can see, the Vray Fur is quite easy to use, and it is quite fast to render because obviously you're rendering with V-Ray and all of that kind of stuff. But just keep in mind that don't overcomplicate with things like, you know, the base map channel. For whatever reason you want to use this as you know, what did it say here? Base map channel. Some texture maps represent vectors in texture space. Yeah, don't even go there. You know, honestly, in my 12 years of experience, in my, you know, when I was working in companies, and I'm still working in companies, so honestly 95% of the times I don't use fur objects at all. It's just in a lot of situations, if the project has to be put out you know, really fast, or you don't have a lot of time to play around with, usually we're just gonna avoid this. I am gonna avoid this, and I'm gonna create something completely different, right? Maybe like a silk throw or something like that, but not a fur throw, right? Because it's going to take time to render and it's going to be quite annoying, and in a lot of situations it kind of looks like crap. So to get the best results, obviously you have to play around with it, save as a preset or save as a model, for example, and, you know, just go from there basically. All right, so I think that this tutorial here, this first part was quite informative, and you did understand a bit Vray Fur. You know, you did understand it a bit better. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna basically save this scene, and I'm gonna open another scene, which is gonna be our, where is it, material test fur, right? So now we're gonna I'm gonna show you guys how to play around with a material, and what materials should you use, right? So this was my test here. As you can see, it looks really nice. It looks like a fur coat or something. Like, it looks really soft, and it doesn't look too sharp, and it does work really well, right? Obviously it took some time to render on my potato CPU, and I was using quite a lot of hair strands. So now keep in mind, this throw here is from Marvelous Designer, and as you can see, you have these small triangles there. You can call it polys, faces, whatever, right? So as you can see, I didn't use Pro Optimizer, and as you can see, you have the poly count, sorry, the distribution of these triangles, or these polys, whatever you want to call them. They are these faces, they are completely even, right? So I don't have a bigger gap. So for example, if I'm gonna apply a Pro Optimizer now, and let's just say I'm gonna keep textures, keep UV boundaries, calculate, blah blah blah, it's gonna take some time. Bam, there we go. So now if I'm gonna put 20, so this is what you're gonna happen. You're gonna get more detail on the detail areas and less detail. You know, you have a big, massive, you know, face there. So you're gonna get less hair strands there and more hair strands there, right? So, you know, and this is how you can obviously apply, you know, optimization. So for example, if I'm gonna press 7, you know, the full one is what, 100%, so 448,000 polys, so 448k. Now 40%, that's going to be 179. So I'm cutting it like almost in half, right? So obviously, if you're not losing a lot of detail, you can do this. So 50, 60. So 60, 50, that's working perfectly fine. As you can see, I don't see a lot of distribution or distortion in the geometry. So for example, if I'm gonna put 20, you can see it looks like crap, right? So 30, 40, 50, I can work with 50 easily. 45, no. So 50, so literally I cut everything in half, which is pretty cool, right? And you're keeping all the UVs and everything there, everything is fine, right? By the way, this object was going to be used for static, right? So the topology of this object in Max is completely useless, okay? So if you're working on in ArcViz, I'm not talking about animations, rigging characters with cloth modifiers and all of that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about that, right? The topology maybe is really important when you're exporting things from ZBrush or Moodbox or something like that. But talking about Max and ArcViz in general, the topology is literally, if you're exporting a perfect model from a Marvelous Designer or something like that, and if you're retopologizing this, I will say this, you're just wasting your time, man. So nobody cares what is the topology, as long as the object looks good, doesn't give you shading problems, doesn't give you turbo smoothing problems or anything like that. You're good. You don't need to retopologize it. Now, some people do create things with Marvelous Designer and export them to 3ds Max, and they do retopologize them by using the skin modifier and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, they're selling those models, and those models look really good. But keep that in mind that for example, in this situation, when I'm using a Pro Optimizer, right? So let's just say I just cut my poly count from 450 polys to half, right? And the looks of it didn't change at all. Literally, I can literally see the same object. Now I do get one big triangle there, one big triangle there, and I get more triangles there, right? But the thing is, you don't need that information there. You don't need that much information there. It's a straight, surface there. Now you do need information there, and that's what Pro Optimizer is doing. Now, if you're gonna be retopologizing this, completely with an even topology, you're gonna be having the same amount of polygons there and there, right? So either you're gonna miss some information there, and you're gonna add some information there. So you don't need information there, but you need more information there. So I would rather concentrate that information over there, that where I need it, and delete that information from where I don't need it. So I think, in my understanding, in ArcViz, that's quite important. But for whatever reason, some people are retopologizing beds, pillows, and all that kind of stuff, and I honestly don't see the point, unless maybe he's selling for someone that needs a perfect topology, right? And obviously, I'm not gonna use the Pro Optimizer in this case, right? So let's go back to my camera preview here, and let's go back to our fur. So these are the settings that I managed to use, and everything here, as you can see, it's quite simple. So I'm using these settings here, no material IDs, no base map channels or anything like that. I'm using the preview of 2000. Now this number here, it's a big number. Okay, so first of all, it's a big number. When I was rendering this, it took me around 40 minutes at 1.5 thousand pixels, and it took around 8.5 gigs of RAM, or physical RAM, right? So it was quite easy to render. Obviously, my potato CPU did take some time, but it looks kind of good. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it looks quite nice, right? So the less hair strands you're gonna have, the worse it's gonna look. because you want to fill all of those gaps, right? You don't want to put any gaps in between those hair strands. So obviously I went just crazy with this number just because I could, and my max didn't crash. Everything was working perfectly fine, right? So I'm gonna show you maybe two materials, because I think that's gonna make really straightforward. It's really, really easy to use, right? So this is my material. Now I'm gonna show you a couple of examples in the beginning just for you to understand how to work with this properly. So in this case, I'm gonna drop this to 100, okay? Because I don't want to render 3000 now. I'm gonna leave the direction and everything there. So now my throw material is literally this one, which is a fall off map into diffuse, no reflection, no nothing, right? This is what I'm gonna get now. So let me just first do one more thing, which is I'm gonna decrease the rendering a bit. So this is obviously really, really low. So I'm gonna put this higher. I'm gonna put this to 10 for now. And I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna press the IPR mode. There we go. So it's gonna load all of those strands into my memory now. It's gonna take a couple of seconds. There we go. So I'm gonna put, I'm gonna put a region maybe there. All right, so it's rendering my fur. And what I wanna do here now is put a material, right? So let's just say I'm gonna put a V-Ray material, which is a completely simple V-Ray material, right? Bam, there we go. So obviously it's gonna recalculate this again. And I think for this testing purposes, I need to use a lower number because obviously it keeps reloading. So let's just say we're gonna use 30. All right, there we go. So 30, there we go. It works perfectly fine. Obviously, you can see bigger gaps there, but you can see how V-Ray simple material is working with V-Ray Fur, right? And don't get me wrong. Let me just uncheck this for now, right? Because I have one map there. I will be talking about this a bit later on. So this is, let me just recalculate this. And the length map, I'm gonna remove that. So I'm using the bent and the length map. So I'm gonna show you which ones I'm using there. So this is a V-Ray Fur object, and I'm using a V-Ray material, which is a gray material, and you know, it's a really simple material, nothing complicated there. Now I'm gonna create another material, right? And I'm gonna show you with a fall off map, right? So I'm gonna put a grayish color, let's just say 175, and I'm gonna put a bit of more warmth. And the other color, which is gonna be 220 for, 220, and it's gonna be a bit warmer as well. There you go. And I'm gonna make a fall off something like that, right? So I'm gonna put this into diffuse and I'm gonna apply this material onto my V-Ray Fur, right? So as you can see here now, you're seeing a bit of a more smoother effect. So let me just try to change this to a blackish color. Something like that maybe. So obviously the fall off will work for each and every strand and obviously in general, right? So let me just render this one now here. Okay. And I'm gonna put this, I just wanna show you as much examples as possible, right? So this was with a fall off. Okay, and now I'm gonna cancel this. And I'm gonna pick this color here, copy, and I'm gonna paste it here, right? And I'm gonna apply on my fur and I'm gonna render the same thing. Now you can instantly see that this color here, so honestly I don't even need to render this fully, so I'm just gonna cancel this. So this was with a fall off map, as you can see, which is more like a fabricy fall off map. So check my fabric materials video this will make sense. So I just don't want to obviously extend this too much. So as you can see with the fall off map, the fur looks a lot better, right? So now without it, it looks really dark and dull and boring, right? Now with the fall off, where is it? Now with the fall off, as you can see, it works a lot more better, right? So now I'm gonna pick those guys and delete them completely. All right, so this was the most primitive way of how to apply a material on your fur, right? Now, I will delete these guys completely, okay? And so I will, that thing is applied on my throw. Now, when you think about Vray Fur material, right? So what is a Vray Fur? Well, it's a hair, right? So basically, you're applying hair strands. So here, what you need to do is find some kind of a hair material. And Vray has really, really nice hair materials. Now, actually, it has two hair materials, which is quite cool. Now, so I'm gonna show you one example. So this was created with a hair material which was the initial one that Vray created, which was Vray hair material. Now this Vray hair material here, where is it? There we go. So this is the Vray hair material. Now don't get me wrong, by default it's, you know, it's a bit of a different, where is it? Vray hair material, there we go. So if I'm gonna apply this Vray hair material, so just, you know, just from the get-go, I just applied it and I just gonna press render now. So wait for a sec. There we go. So this is what we're getting now here, right? Bam, there we go. So this is how it works, right? So you can see that, you know, now don't, you know, look at this as a, oh my God, there are so many numbers, colors, and all of that stuff. Literally, when you're playing around with Vray, ignore all of this thing, right? Obviously, you have to understand what is glossiness and, you know, specular amount and all of that kind of stuff. But how can you know how it's gonna look if you put 0.5? How do you know that it's gonna look completely like you imagine if you're gonna put 0.8, right? So obviously you do understand that primary specular amount, which is basically, you have no idea what is primary specular amount, blah blah blah, but you do kind of get that the 0.8 is gonna be more, you know, basically the speculars are gonna be more intense, right? And by the way, the primary specular color is set to gray. So if we're gonna put this to white, now you can see how the specular is working, right? And you can see the preview there as well. So now I'm gonna put this to 1, and you can see you get less speculary and more, and primary glossiness, which is gonna be the glossiness of it, so 0.4. You know, it's gonna be looking really, really matte, and then you can make it shiny and more shiny and more shiny and more shiny, right? There we go. So then we can change the color, right? So to whatever color you want to change, right? For whatever reason. And keep in mind you have presets. So white matted. So this is what you're gonna get, right? Now you have another preset, white shiny, you know, blonde matted. It's kind of yellowish, but anyways, blonde shiny, and brown shiny. Literally I don't see anything there. Black matted and all of that kind of stuff, right? You have a lot of different presets there. Now overall multiplier, you have you know, you can choose a color, for example, opacity, which should be completely white, or for whatever reason you want to keep this without any you know, opacity or whatever, but keep this at 255 color. Now diffuse color, which is obviously your diffuse color, you can apply even. Now if you see a dye or diffuse color, just understand this, that, you know, this is a diffuse color and it should take a texture into consideration, and where you have this box here, you can apply a texture, right? So if I'm gonna apply this texture there, just wait a sec, there we go. So bam, there we go. It's taking that texture into consideration, right? Now you can control the diffuse amount, right? So 0 is going to be no texture at all. 1 is going to take my texture fully into consideration, as you can see here. Now overall multiplier with the texture, and you know, overall multiplier of the hair, how it's going to look. So shine, you know, lighter and all of that kind of stuff. And keep in mind that you can even put this into color correction here and put up, sorry. So overall multiplier, you can put this here. Now the blacks are gonna become really dark and less translucent, or whatever you want to call it. It's an effect, right? So for whatever effect you want to get. Now let's just say I will put this into 5, and that's what you're gonna get. So now you can see that you have a lot of different controlling here, right? And so we just applied a map. Now we can choose the specular to whitish, right? So the fur is gonna look a bit more, you know, shiny, or whatever you want to call it. Now we can apply, by the way, I created this texture by using Google, finding some kind of texture, cropping it, and you know, it's basically like a zebra texture or something like that. So those are the textures that I'm gonna be, you know, trying to play around with it. And obviously, you know, you can make them seamless, or for whatever reason you want to make whatever you want to make. Now this is the primary glossiness, specular, whatever. Now you have another one as well, a lock to transmission. So transmission is some kind of like a translucency effect, right? Just keep that in mind. Secondary specular. So now lock to transmission, basically you're locking to this thing here, right? Or you can unlock it and change secondary glossiness. You can change this to 2 or whatever. Just literally manipulate. So the more secondary glossiness, so see how glossy it's gonna get, but just be really careful with it, because you don't want to get any white speckles or highlights on your fur, because that looks just completely crap, right? So use this at your caution, with caution, sorry. But usually default works quite well, and as you can see here on my preset here, I was working with the default. So let's just say we're gonna keep this by default, and by default it was 0.8, right? So let's just put this to 0.5 for this reference. Now primary, yeah, we're gonna keep this to a darker color a bit. Now transmission, for the transmission you can choose even a color. So it's gonna be, the color is gonna be transmitted through your hair strands. All right, so just keep that in mind as well. You can desaturate it a bit, you know, make it browner or whatever you want to do there. You can do it, right? As you can see here, it works quite well. Don't get me wrong. This V-Ray hair, the first initial one, it works pretty well. I mean, for some situations, it can work really well as well, really well. So so by the way, maybe I will keep this, right? So I'm getting a nice effect here, right? So transmission amount, obviously you can control the amount of it, how much of this color you want to get. You can apply even a texture. I mean, this is just crazy. You can go literally crazy. Just try to experiment with it, right? Now transmission glossiness length is going to be basically the length of your glossiness, right? And you can get various different effects as well. Obviously it's hard to see maybe on this color. Maybe if you would apply a different color, all right, so you do get okay, that's fine. So 0, so you do get a different look somewhere there. 1, it's gonna be basically the length is gonna change. So as you can see, you're getting quite cool effects. If I'm gonna render this guy here, you know, it's rendering fine, and we are using 30, right, per area. So if you're gonna go higher, obviously your hair strands are gonna be more dense. Now transmission glossiness length, let's just say 0.5, and transmission glossiness with 0. So you can see it will become more matte looking. I mean, honestly guys, you don't even need to render the full thing. You just need to render the light cache. If you want to increase the light cache preview, you can do that by going to GI light cache and just put this to 2000 samples, for example, and it will, you know, recalculate this. Each and every time you're gonna get a more refined light cache. But anyways, you will see the basic view, and then you can render just a small region, or you know, you have to press this button here if you want it to follow. So there we go. So we're getting you know, this kind of a result, and then let's just say, you know, you want to control this to 1 for whatever reason, right? So whatever effect you want to get, right? So first of all, make a scene, make your throw object, apply the the Vray Fur modifier object, play around with the settings first, apply a really simple material, you know, try to be happy with the model first, and then play around with the material. Only then play around with the material first, calibrate these settings, and then create a Vray Fur material. All right, so this is what we're getting now here. So opaque for shadows, so we're moving down. Opaque for shadows, basically it's gonna change the looks of the shadows a bit, right? So basically these are for optimization, as you can see. Opaque for GI, basically it's just gonna be it's just gonna ignore the GI a bit more, and it's gonna be faster to render. It's gonna look a bit maybe more flatter, but at the same time it's going to be faster to render. So this is almost optimization, right? So, and the same thing I will show you guys, Vray hair material, right? So let's just say you're gonna go here and type Vray hair material, right? You type that here, and there you go. So you see, where is it? Okay, there you go. So opaque for shadows, when this is enabled, the hair material is always opaque for shadows. This speeds up the rendering, blah, 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 right? This is what you need to know. So opaque for shadows calculations, right? So basically it's gonna kind of ignore the shadows or whatever. This will speed the rendering, obviously. Opaque for GI, this is gonna be the same, speed the rendering, right? For transparent hair. So keep that in mind. If you have a really crappy machine, you can play around with this, right? So Vray is really adaptive. You just need to know what to press, and obviously you have the docs and you can check everything there. Simplify for GI, same thing. You know, we're gonna be using a where is it? When enabled, simplify diffuse version of BRDiff to use GI calculations, blah blah blah, right? So if you're disabling this, it's gonna be slower to render. By default, this is enabled, so it is simplifying the GI, right? So it's basically, it's on the get-go, it's simplifying the GI for you in calculations of the fur, and it will be faster to render. If you want to unlock it, obviously it might give you a bit more finer detail or finer calculation, or maybe you're not going to even see the difference, right? Now, used cached GI, that's another option for optimization. So this option is similar to the user radiance map. So if you're gonna check this out, your hairs are gonna be calculated with using you know, GI with irradiance map. If you're gonna uncheck it, basically it's gonna be brute force, right? And that's what it says here as well. The hair material will always be calculated with brute force, right? So like I said, these are for optimization, right? So if you check all of them, it's going to be really optimized and faster to render. If you check all of them off, it's going to be slower to render but more physically accurate to render, right? So just keep that in mind. Quite simple. All right, and all of these are just maps, right? So you include a map, and obviously when you drag and drop a map there, the map will appear there, right? So this is the first Vray. Sorry, just gonna press stop for now. So this is the Vray hair material, which is the first iteration, and this is a bit less physically accurate. Now this material works really well. Don't get me wrong. Sorry about that. No, don't get me wrong. This material works really well, but So this is what I did get with this material. There we go. So this is what I did get, and it does look quite nice. And don't get me wrong, it looks a bit maybe too sharp as you look at these hair strands here. It looks maybe a bit too sharp, but in general it looks quite well. Now this is a different material, and as you can see, it looks a bit more smoother and softer. It does look quite nice, right? Even to my picky eyes, it does look quite nice. It doesn't, I wouldn't give it a 10, but it is quite nice. So this is a second material, which is going to be V-Ray Hair Next material. So this material is a more accurate V-Ray hair material, or hair material, whatever. So if I'm going to apply this material onto my model, my fur object, so if I'm going to press the interactive mode, so bam, straight from the get-go, I'm getting some nice effects. There you go. And the options are quite simple as well. Basically, I'm not gonna go through all of them. Play around yourself, but literally the main options are gonna be obviously melanin and for melanin. Basically, it's gonna be controlling the lightness of your hair, the darkness. So for example, 0.1, you're gonna go a bit more to the blondie side. So the more melanin that the hair is gonna have, honestly, you don't really need to know this, but just keep in mind that if you're gonna go to 1, it's gonna be a completely blackish hair. If you're gonna go 0, it's gonna be white. If you're gonna go 0.1, it's gonna start becoming more blondie. Right now, if I'm gonna go to 0.4, let's just say, right, or maybe 0.2. And if I'm gonna increase the faux melanin, basically what's gonna do is basically it's gonna start increasing the contrast of it, right? The effect of it. Sorry, if I'm gonna use it's like a contrasty. I'm not even sure how to call it, but it kind of gives like a contrast effect, right? So obviously we can go to where is it? V-Ray. Do they have that V-Ray Hair Next? Wow, V-Ray Hair Next material. Now I'm not sure where did they put V-Ray Hair Next material. Let me check it out. I'm not sure if we're gonna have this here, but obviously as you can see, it gives us, and as you can see, they have really nice examples, right? So melanin, as you can see, 0.25, it's lighter blondie and darkish, and for melanin 0, for melanin 65, and for melanin 95. So you're seeing that it kind of, your hair is kind of getting more translucent, or whatever you want to call it. And same for the darker melanin hair. So that's the darker hair. You can see that the hair is becoming more translucent, right? So the shadows are becoming less dense, or literally the translucency, the transmission is a bit different, right? So now what about dyed here? So that's, you can paint them, or, well, for some people just call it dyed, right? Shine is all about the hair structure, right? So obviously, as you can see, this approach is a bit more, well, it's not a bit more, it's a lot more accurate to real life examples, right? So as you can see here, the highlight shift, right? You can shift the highlights. I mean, come on guys, you can do a lot of different stuff, right? Now I'm not sure where did V-Ray put the settings for it. Let me just try to find it. So V-Ray Hair Next material, and I'm not sure did they put it to Maya, the new hair shader. Yeah, but it doesn't give me the settings basically. Maybe they didn't put this on their website, I'm not sure. So new hair shader, we already saw that one. Let's check this one. Nope. All right, so I will find this later on. V-Ray hair next. I'm trying to find this V-Ray hair next serial. Docs. So Vray Fur, okay, Vray hair material, blah 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 blah. I think I'm gonna have to find this later on, but I cannot really find that on Vray docs. So Vray next, new hair shader. Yeah, but that's the thing. It doesn't show the settings. Well, don't worry about it. Basically, just, like I said, always try to play around with it, right? So let me just first disable the denoiser because it's kind of useless here. So there we go. So I'm gonna basically re-render this region, and we're gonna obviously play around with it, right? A bit more. So maybe, there you go. So let's just say this is at 1 and this is at 0, and as you can see how darker it's becoming, 0. So I'm going to be showing you this from the light cache, right, because it's going to be a bit better. So dye color, obviously we can apply a color, all right, and let's just check this. Sorry, put this to 0 and 0. All right, so this is not giving me the real okay, there you go. So obviously, as you can see, you really need to crank up the color up. So let's just say I'm gonna put this to 1 now. It's gonna be quite dark. Okay, 0.5, 0.2. Now from 0.2, it's starting to take the dye color into consideration, right? And as you can see, you're kind of getting quite cool greenish effect here. There we go. So like you see here, you really can experiment with these settings here. Opacity, black, so no opacity at all, and it's gonna look just really bad, right? So yeah, don't touch that color there. Diffuse color, so that's another color which is going to be, let's just say red, and let's just say the diffuse amount is going to be 1, right? So for whatever reason you want to use this as if you want. Glossiness, same thing. So the hairs are going to be more glossy, right? So by default it's 0.5, and if you want to really matte, there we go, that's matte. Okay, so the default is 0.5. Primary glossiness boost, so you're basically boosting the glossiness, right? I'm gonna put that by default. Softness, now this is really important, and I really liked this setting. So basically, when I was showing you my example, I was using the softness of 1, and I will show you that in a second, because it does give that softness to the hair strands. I'm not sure how Vray is calculating this, but it is giving a really nice effect. Now you can see how sharp the hairs are now, and for 1, if you put 1, you will start seeing how softer the hair is gonna get. It's like a some kind of an interpolation there going on in the shadows and in the highlights and everywhere else, and it just looks so amazing, right? Now I would definitely recommend using this at 1 because it just gives really nice effects, especially if you're trying to make a soft looking rug, a fur rug or whatever. Now highlight, shift, play around with this, but it will basically shift the highlights to different location or whatever. Default is 2. I mean, works perfectly fine. The IOR, you can play around with IOR. I would leave it by default because it is kind of for a hair. You can use 0.4 or something like that, or or along those lines, or for whatever reason you want to get a different effect, or for whatever reason, but default works really really well. Now these settings I didn't completely test them out, but they will give you different effects, and I would recommend you to test them out. Now like I said, I didn't play around with these settings, but play around with them. Obviously we can try to crank these numbers really big, and let's just see how it's gonna be working. Honestly, I don't see a lot of differences here, but it will give you some maybe highlight differences or something like that, right? So really the thing is, you're not gonna see this from the light cache. You need to literally render it, right? So if I'm gonna put this to 0 0 0 0, honestly I didn't see any change in the light cache at all. All right, glint here, V-Ray. Glint and glitter, okay. But I'm just curious why the hell I am not seeing the features, all the features for that thing there. So obviously we can't see everything here. He's controlling the glint strength. It's like a glitter or something like that. Obviously you can see the examples here. I mean, it's pretty cool. That's quite shiny. Yeah, okay, so he's using the glitter strength. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So let's keep in mind that this is some kind of like a glittery strength here that you can use. 5 scale, let's just put this to 3. Maybe it's on some highlights you will see that a bit better. So you should start rendering some highlights a bit, and you will see maybe the difference there. So for this instance, let's just try to render this region here. Now I'm rendering this like I said, on my potato CPU, so just bear with me for a sec. All right, so let's just say this is with that, and I will delete this guy and save it out. All right, now let's put this to 0. I render this out. All right, so now I can instantly see that it does, I think, put less glittery, or I don't know, reflective effect. So let me save that guy in. So that's going to be the latest one. So that's the first one. Oops, sorry, let me just close it, because sometimes we really don't want to. All right, so this is with the glitter. Sorry, that's without. So now you can see that. Let me just delete that. So that's with that glittery effect, right? So we're using 1 1 everywhere, and we're using 0 0 here. So you can see how the hair looks a bit more duller, and I don't know, it doesn't look boring, but it looks a bit more duller, right? Now this one, as you can see, it does apply that nice shiny I'm not gonna say glitter, I'm just gonna say this, that it does look a bit more shiny, right? So for example, if you're making a really nice quality fur, I would recommend using this setting here, which is glint, which is called glint. So I would recommend using this to a higher number sizes or whatever, so you will get a really nice shiny effect, especially on these perpendicular angles. So for example, an angle like that. So on a different angle, and on obviously depending on your lighting as well, it will look quite nice. It will look quite shiny, right? So the hair the hair is gonna look really healthy, right? So obviously for a fur rug, it's not that much important, but you know, as you can see, that highlight works really well with that glint variation and glint strength. I mean, how high can you go? Okay, so one is the maximum. One is the maximum. The maximum is 2 here, and 5. Oh, wow, you can go really, really high up there. So let's just say I'm gonna render that again. And the scale. Oh, you can go to scale as well. Alright, so it's a shame that Vray doesn't have any explanation, a more in-depth explanation on their documents. You cannot really find it, so where is it? So Vray here next. Vray here next. No results found. That's perfect. That's actually perfect. Vray here next MTL. Yeah, there we go. So obviously you can see even from this preview, right? So 2, 1. Actually, let me just stop this for now. So this is not updating, right? All right, so you can see something in that preview, but literally this is almost nothing, right? You cannot literally say what's gonna happen with that, right? So, but obviously this setting here, it will give you some, just understand this, it will give you some shininess to your hair. And we saw that from the YouTube video here. So without all of those glint and glitter effects, basically your hair are gonna be a bit more dull. With this glint effects, right? If you're gonna be increasing that and playing around with it, it's gonna give you more shininess to your hair. Now, randomization, this is just a bit insane. How much control do you have here? I'm not gonna even go here. With my slow CPU, it's gonna take ages to show you guys, but experiment out with this. You know, just draw a region somewhere there on a highlight or there. And you know, you can press, for example, you know, render. I will put a couple of them, right? So you can see how this works, right? 5. So you can see that our fur is getting more shiny, right? All right, so just remember this. This is gonna give you more shininess to your hairs, right? Now let's move on to randomization. So 5, 5, 5. Oh my god, this is randomizing like crazy. The random dia. Oh my god, look at this. This is insane. Yeah, you can really go crazy with this guy. Random melanin. So you can even put a random melanin, which is going to be your obviously the first option that you chose here. Yeah, but yeah, I didn't, obviously, if you want to you know, get something more procedural and more random, you know, play around with these settings, obviously you have to understand that this is called randomization. It's like a variation in Vray Fur. This is a variation randomization in the hair strands. So if you want to get really something really unique, you know, play around with it. And look, we can make even a gray hair. I'm not sure if it's gonna render. Yep, it's rendering. So basically it's like a white color, right? So you can even control that with melanin at 0, or even applying a color of yourself. So 0 there. And tint, obviously primary tint, secondary tint, transmission tint, which is transmission is gonna be more like a translucency tint. Secondary tint and primary tint, obviously play around with these settings. So it's gonna tint it as primary, whatever it is, right? So if you're getting a nice effect that you like, you know, play around with it. Now if I'm gonna press cancel, if I'm gonna go to the secondary one, I'm gonna get something secondary is gonna, okay, so it makes sense. So the primary tint is gonna be basically applied somewhere on the top of your hair strands, somewhere in the middle. Now the secondary tint, that's gonna be go towards your roots, right? So it's gonna go deeper. So as you can see here, if I'm gonna apply a red color, it's not applying on the top bit of your hair strands, but it is applying somewhere deeper inside, next to the roots. So this is gonna be a glossiness from somewhere going from the roots. Okay, now if I'm gonna apply the primary to red, now this is taking from the somewhere from the top or from the middle of the hair strand, and as you can see, this is getting really red, right? And the transmission, obviously, it's gonna literally be red, right? Because it's basically the translucency from your hair, right? And that looks really scary if you ask me. So I'm gonna put this to a white color, and I'm gonna put this to a white color as well. Now, so tint obviously makes sense, play around with it, shininess and all of that kind of stuff. And obviously you have maps, which are, you kind of plug all the maps in, and advanced bounces and subdivs. Now obviously the more subdivs you're gonna have, the slower it's gonna take to render. Bounces is basically, how many times it's gonna be bouncing, as in for your GI, right? So the more bounces you're gonna have, the slower it's gonna take to render, and in some cases the better it's gonna look, right? Now the less bounces you're gonna have, the faster rendering times you're gonna get, and you can lose some detail or some realism from your hair. From your fur, right? So just keep that in mind, right? So in general, I wouldn't touch these, but if you really need to, play around with this just to gain some rendering speed, please do, be my guest. And that's about it in regards of this one as well. So in my situation and in my recommendation, I would recommend using Vray Hair Next material, because that's the newest one and that's the more accurate one. And even Corona has melanin, even Corona has a hair material, and it has melanin, photomelanin, and phenomelanin, and all of that kind of stuff. So, and even when I was playing around, I was getting a more nicer effects with this Vray Next material, Vray Hair Next material, rather than just Vray Hair material. Now, I'm not saying that you cannot work with this one, you can. And you can optimize the crap out of that one, because you have all the optimization here, as you can see here, which is double click, stop that. So as you can see here, you can optimize it quite well, but you're gonna get a lot better results. Sorry, I'm getting the bug, so you have to open the F10, close it, and then you can delete it. So basically you will get a better result with a Vray Hair Next material. Okay, now so I will delete this material, and I'm gonna drop my material that I created, which is gonna be, we'll delete that, and which is this one. And now look how simple it is, right? So I will apply this, and I'm gonna press interactive rendering. We're just gonna wait for a sec. There we go. And look how simple this material is. All right, so so basically I have a texture, and that texture is using a 0303 tiling, which is going to be a lot bigger, obviously. And I'm using a fall off. I'm plugging into the two slots, and I'm using a 70% of this texture and 30% of this white color. So I'm gonna get like a fall off, right? And then I'm plugging into color correction because I needed to make it a bit darker. And I did plug into the dye color, right? And everything else I was playing around with, it was quite default, and everything was working fine. I wasn't playing with the glint because everything here was by default. I was playing around with it a bit, but obviously, you know, I was trying to make this as fast as possible, obviously. And I wasn't using any tint or randomization, but but literally I just plug the texture in and that's about it. Now another thing that I did was quite important, obviously. You know, this was looking quite nice, but at the same time was looking quite boring, right? So what I was trying to do here, so forget about this number for now. I increase that number later on, right? So keep in mind this. If you're going to increase this number, it's going to be slower to render and longer to render. And, well, yeah, longer to render basically. And it's going to take more RAM. Now, the lower the number, the faster it's going to render and the less RAM is going to take, right? Now, if you're using really low numbers, let's just say 2 or 1 or 0.5. There you go. So now look what's going to happen. We're going to see through, we literally see through our hair strands and we're seeing our material in the back, right? Now keep in mind this, if you have a really crappy machine, right, a really bad machine, what I would recommend doing is basically applying this material. So let's just say you're gonna create a V-Ray material and applying this fall off into the diffuse and applying this texture onto your object. Now in this case you're gonna get something like this. It's gonna look quite ugly, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, from afar away especially, it will look like it's fur because you will get these hair strands showing up, right? But at the same time you're gonna bump up the effect with just the texture on top of your object, right? So now obviously if you're gonna look from far away, it will look kind of furry, right? But at the same time you don't have a lot of hair strands. So in my case, if you have a lot of hair strands, everything is covering the surface, obviously you can't just apply a, you know, darkish material or a lightish material. It really depends, you know, what kind of a base it is, right? So I will delete this for now. So it was just a tip basically. If you have an ancient PC basically, you know, you can do that. Basically apply a texture on top and apply a really small amount of hairs and, you know, you will get that result. And obviously don't forget to use level of detail, then dynamic tessellation and also knots, right? So you can reduce the knot count. So I'm going to increase this to 30. All right. Because that was our number in the beginning. Obviously I was rendered this with 300, so, but yeah, it took some time. So all right, so this is the material, and as you can see, this is a really simple material. I just chucked the material inside of the dye color and that's about it, right? And I did reduce the melanin and the pheomelanin, right? So now the next thing that I did is basically I went to my my V-Ray hair material object, and I did put a length map. Now the length map, now give him some time because it's recalculating it. Now this gave a really cool effect. Basically the length, I was showing you this, it's a monomatte, black and white, right? Now if I'm gonna drag this color correction here, instance, there we go. So this is what I did. So I didn't want it to be completely black, right? Because the black is gonna basically stay at 0 z-axis or whatever. So basically I checked this into color correction and I made it lighter. So give a sec, just a sec. So I made it at 3, right? So basically that black color is not anymore black, right? And that whitish color is, you know, is almost a complete white color. So obviously the height did change, as you can see here, right? And I still get I still have some height over there as well, right? So which is already giving me a quite cool and interesting effect, right? Now another thing that I want to say is I did use a blend direction map. So direction is basically, sorry, a bend direction map. So where the, you know, where the hair strands are gonna bend in which direction. And I did use a normal map which is basically a normal map for C. So you can create a C effect with this normal map. So literally I was trying to be as creative as possible and as experimentish as possible. And basically I was just using this map. Now imagine that this is not a this is a normal map. You can plug this into Vray normal here. There we go. All right. But at the same time, we would need to put this to override at 1. Keep that in mind, all right? Now, we're not using this as a normal, right? And this will not take normal into consideration, right? Because obviously this is not a bump map or anything like that. So I will delete that for now. Let me just open that because I'm getting a bug with Vray next. There we go. So what I did is basically, obviously this map is just a JPEG with a, you know, RGB channel basically, right? So what I did here is basically plug this into color correction and I made it lighter, right? So obviously you have blues, you have some greenish, bluish, reddish, purplish tints. And this bitmap, obviously it's seamless, but it did give me an interesting result in directions, right? So obviously you saw the difference there. So basically I plugged this into blend direction and this is what it gave me. It gave me so let me, as you can see, it changed it a bit. So I'm gonna stop this for now, right? So, and this is what it gave me, as you can see here, right? So you see the hairs direction are a bit uneven. You can see that, right? So it's going up and left and right, and it's almost all over the place, but it's so subtle. So if I would use this one, that would be really drastic. So what I did is basically went here and made it a lot lighter. So basically it's a subtle effect, but look how it changed the looks of my Vray Fur here, right? And let's just say I will put this to 200. Okay. And I'm using the same blend map. I'm using the same bend map, the same length map, and I'm gonna render now, I don't know, maybe here somewhere. And now let's take a look how it's gonna react. So obviously, and now I'm using 200 per area. So it's gonna be 200 per square centimeter. Now, so now it's compiling obviously all the hairs and all that kind of stuff. So and it's using around 6.6 gigs of RAM. And this is how it renders. Obviously you can see how dense the hair is, right? And I was using 300, by the way. And how soft and nice it does look, right? And by the way, I'm rendering this with the brute force, just so you know. I was explaining this in my Vray materials introduction video, so please check that out. Obviously with the radiance map it's a bit faster, but you get less detail, right? It's a bit more splotchy. So there you go. So I'm just gonna cancel this and let's just put this to 30 again. And so this is so I will be creating 25 different looks for the fur, and I will be putting that on Gumroad. So you know, if you will be kind to support my channel and my courses, obviously you will be able to buy them. But obviously for now I'm just gonna show you a couple of examples and that's it. So you would get an idea how to work with it and play around with it, right? So so let's just try to copy this one, and let's just try to obviously make. So I will put this length map to disabled for now, and I will pick another material, which is going to be this one, for example, right? So it's a different material, and let's just see how it does work. So I'm just curious now how it does look, because first we need to check the mapping, right? So I'm gonna plug this there, plug this there, plug this here, and I'm gonna apply on my material here, and there we go. So you can see that it's a bit too big, right? So let's put this to 6 and 6. There you go, 6 and 6 should be fine. So put this to 0.6 and 0.6, and let's just reapply this guy here, right? There we go. So now we have this guy, right? Now let's just try to render it and see how it's gonna look. So like I said, try to obviously oops, sorry. Did I apply it or not? I don't think I did. All right, give a sec. All right, there we go. So we are applying obviously a different bitmap, and obviously we're getting different results here, as you can see. So now you can see that this looks a bit too, too shiny. So what we want to do is we want to try to reduce that shininess a bit, right? So you can see how shiny it is, right? So highlight shift, all right, so melanin, let's put this to 0.3. You can even control things like this, right? So, and obviously you can play around with melanin and put this guy in. And it will give you, different effects, as you can see here. So the black color obviously is going to be, a stronger effect and all that kind of stuff. So let's just say we're going to clear this. There we go. So we're using this now at the moment. So color, so dye color is going to be that one. And let's just say I want to apply this into my diffuse, right? Bam. And we're going to use the diffuse of maybe 0.4. There we go. So we can see that this texture is taking into consideration a bit more, sharper and more heavier. And this is what we're getting here now. Obviously the effect is different, right? So obviously you can do things like, the same thing basically. So color correction, put that there, for example, and desaturate this, or you don't even need to desaturate it. You just need to basically plug it into the length as an instance, and you can plug it in. So now basically what should happen is you should get, obviously, there you go, you are getting nothing there, no height there. So you can go here if you want to and put this to maybe 3. So there you go. You're gonna start seeing some different areas with different heights there. But obviously, like I said, you don't need to do this if you don't want to. It really depends what kind of a result do you want to get, right? And in this situation, I wouldn't use the length map because the fur looks quite well without it. And obviously with this a fur effect like this one, I would use a shorter hair, just because this fur is it should look a bit more different, right? And obviously I would use more than 30, right? I would use let's just say 250 for this purpose. Let's just say I'm going to use 250 for now. So I'm going to end this first part really soon. I'm going to make a break, and in the next part of this video, we're going to be talking about how to create and how to play around with wax material, right? So there we go. We are getting a 250 hair strands per square centimeter, and as you can see how you know, how smooth and how short the hair is, right? So it mostly, there we go. So you see the hair, but it's so small and thick and so dense, right? And obviously that variation RGB channel works really nice, as you can see here, right? So what nice effects can you get with it, right? And by the way, you know, just don't forget to, you know, play around with all of these settings. So if I'm going to use one that's going to be really diffused, and you don't really want to do that, right? So you want to kind of use in between. You still want to get some of that shininess right through. There we go. So play around obviously with the settings. You know, you can control the opacity a bit down if you want to, right? So obviously you can see that it's a lot slower to render with 250 hair strands, right, per square centimeter. So, you know, play around with these settings as much as possible. So so we have the dye color, we have the diffuse. Obviously we can control the melanin. So let's just say we're going to use this at 1.1. It's going to become lighter, and let's just say we're going to use this at 1, 0. So obviously you can see that it's changing towards the root and the tops. So the looks are, obviously these hairs are so short, right? So obviously it's really hard to see the effect, right? But you know, you can see how smooth it does look, right? So the highlights, look at this, look at these highlights there, they're so good looking, right? Look at that highlight there, it's just perfect. So it works like, you know, like a real fur, like a real, you know, hairy material or something like that. So see how well that does look. Jesus, I mean, and you know, if you're gonna play around for maybe another 30 or 40 minutes, you know, with this, and keep in mind one thing, you need a nice looking texture, right? So this texture is a bit, you know, it's a bit crappy. I made it seamless, but you know, the texture from the ground up is a bit crappy. And what I mean by crappy is, I don't know, it doesn't look, you know, really detailed and really good. I mean, it does look quite well here, but you know, I don't know, I'm not a fan of it. But as you can see, you know, how well you can play around with it, right? So and obviously you can manipulate with V-Ray object, sorry, with Vray Fur object, and then you can jump around and back and forward onto your material, right? Which is the V-Ray Hair Next material, right? So there you go, guys. That's how you create you know, V-Ray Fur in general, and you can create you know, rugs, you know, also you can apply this on clothes as well, and all that kind of stuff, you know. Use your imagination, use this wherever you want to use this, and you have the full control and optimization in V-Ray with this kind of thing, right? And I'm not even talking about V-Ray Fur parameters or material, I'm talking about rendering settings as well, obviously, right? So there you go, and thank you for watching, guys, and see you in the second part of this video. We're going to be talking about wax materials. All right, so see you then. All right, welcome back, and in this second part of this video I'm going to be talking about wax. So how to create a wax V-Ray material, which is a quite simple approach. So I'm not going to be using the Fast SSS2, the V-Ray Fast SSS2, because it's I didn't really like it how it works, and I think for beginners it's going to be a bit more maybe complicated, and the settings there are a bit annoying in a way. So I found myself spending way too much time playing around with the materials like translucency in using fast SSS2. So I literally switched myself to just using a V-Ray material. That's how it should be, right? It's a lot easier to set up. It's really easy, it's really fast, and it looks really good as well. Obviously you have a lot more controls with fast SSS2, but I'm gonna be showing you guys how to create that with V-Ray material, because like I said, I didn't really like the settings for fast SSS2 in creating wax material. You have to play around a lot longer, and I wasn't getting a nice effect with displacements and the bump maps. It wasn't working really well for me. So like I said, I'm gonna be showing you guys how to use this in a more simpler way. Later on we can try to experiment with fast SSS, but like I said, you don't really need to use this to create a wax material, right? So it's gonna be quite simple, okay? And so as you can see here in this preview, I did create a wax material, a really generic wax material. So if you go to Google and type wax or whatever, wax candle or something like that, you can literally see you know, so many different examples in waxes. You have you know, this oldish yellowish wax material. You can see the translucency here, right? Obviously this is plastic, this is not real, but obviously they did create that effect there. You know, you can create things like that, and even like that if you really want to put more time into it. I did create a concept for you guys how to use and how to create a wax material in a simple way. So from there on, you're gonna have a really strong base where to start. Obviously, you know, you can create a wax material like that and just apply a bump map. And obviously that's a bump map as well. You can use a displacement if you want to, but the main thing for you guys is it will be to create a wax material, right? So, you know, something like that. For example, you have different colorful waxes as well. So waxes, for example, something like that. So, you know, you have different colors, different translucency types as well. Some candles will be more translucent, some will be less translucent. It really depends. The IOR for wax usually I use from 1.4 to 1.45, something like that. So it gives that nice effect there. You know, even that dark wax there or something along those lines, right? So let's get to it. Basically, I'm going to show you an example of how to create it. So this, by the way, this studio scene, this wax studio scene will be included in my master file. By the way, I will repeat myself again. Don't forget to watch my first video on this playlist. It's going to be called V-Ray Materials Introduction. I'm going to be introducing you with the scene, with settings and all of that kind of nice stuff. And also I'm going to be talking about my master file, so which is going to be on Gumroad, and you can obviously buy it through my website, romasnoreka.com, or you know, go directly to Gumroad and get the master file. So let's get to it, right? So as you can see here, I did create a really simple wax material. So this scene is a simple studio scene using an HDRI. So by the way, I will be talking about that in my V-Ray Materials introduction. So I did apply a displacement map on this one, on this geometry here, and this one as well. So basically this is an instance of this displacement map, right? So it's using the same. So if I'm going to change anything here, this will, you know, that displacement modification will apply on this one as well, right? So this is a instance. So how you do that, just basically press Ctrl, hold it, drag and drop there, right? So for example, sorry if you're curious. So for example, you press Ctrl, you drag this one and just drop it down, right? So it's gonna be an instance, right? If you're gonna be just dragging with your mouse and dropping it, that's not gonna be an instance, right? So I'm gonna go back. Sorry, there you go. All right, so I have the same displacement on here and the same here, and they're instance, right? Now, I did apply a displacement here just to make it look a bit more interesting, right? Just so it would look like a waxy material, right? So let's get to it. So first of all, by the way, I will be rendering this in 1.5K, so you will see a lot more detail. I will be rendering regions because on my potato CPU is quite slow to render. Well, it's not that bad. I'm using a Intel i7, 10 core, 20 threads, 3 GHz. The memory is 128 gigs of RAM, and the GPU is NVIDIA Titan X Pascal. So, you know, GPU, memory, all is good. CPU, obviously, on the slower side. But it's okay for me for now. So let's create our first wax material. So what I'm going to do is basically now apply a gray material. There we go. I'm going to do that here as well. So I'm going to create a couple of options. Obviously, it's going to be really easy. Maybe 5 options for you to get your head around a bit more. So I'm gonna do this, I don't know, wax 01 for example, and I'm gonna press the interactive mode. There we go. So as you can see here, the displacement is doing its job, right? So obviously it's calculating the displacement, as you can see here. If I'm gonna disable it, no displacement there, obviously a lot faster to render. And displacement on, there we go. So as you can see, it's rendering, everything is good. Now I'm just gonna take the same displacement map and I'm gonna chug this into a bump map, right? So for the bump map, I cannot remember which one I used. I already created this material. So 30, yeah, I think 30 was fine. So 30, it's gonna be in the bump map, which is fine. And obviously I'm using a 1 blur and some area, so it does look a bit better. I was talking about these filtering effects in my previous videos, so do check them out. And obviously I'm using this displacement, which is literally a seawater ocean map. I think it was, what was the name? It was OceanCom 2K, right? So OceanCom 2K. So that's, I think it's 1K, that's a 2K. All right, so basically what I did, I imported that and I did use a different tiling. So that's the U is gonna be 1 and the V is gonna be 0.15, right? So as you can see, everything is rendering fine. So another thing I wanted to do is obviously apply a black color. So what you're gonna do is basically apply a blackish color, which is gonna be 1 or 2, that's more than enough. You can use 2 or 1, so for the best contrast. And you want to add some reflection, right? So let's just say we're gonna put 150 now. This is what you're getting, right? And for obviously wax is a lot more matte here, so 1.6 0.6 or something like that. And the next thing we're going is going to change is the IOR, right? So obviously the reflection IOR is locked to your refraction, right? So that's how it should be. But for whatever reason, if you're just working with reflection, no refraction at all, obviously you can unlock this and change the reflection IOR. You don't need to go here and change it, right? But we will be working with refraction, so we're changing this to 1.45, okay? Now the max depth, leave this at 5 for now. I mean, you can experiment with that later on, but I don't see the point creating a wax material and using a higher max depth. All right, so the diffuse color is blackish, not completely black, but just 1, right? Reflection is somewhere around 150. Obviously we can control that later on. And glossiness 0.6. Now for the glossiness, I will be using a bitmap, right? So reflection glossiness, there we go. And we're gonna mix this at 50 or so, okay? So we're mixing 50 of this bitmap and 50 of this number glossiness, right? Of this glossiness number. Now, obviously this doesn't look anything like a wax material at the moment. So what we need to do is we're gonna use translucency, right? Because wax materials have translucency, right? So I was talking about this in plastics and other materials that have translucency, so which is plastics, glass, etc., right? So basically how you're going to control this is going to be quite easy. If to activate, so for example, for translucency you have to use a model which is called hard wax model. So it's really good to use this for wax materials or for marble, stone, or whatever, right? So the next thing, if you want to use this translucency setup, right, you need to go to refraction and you need to put this to I don't know, 250 is more than enough, right? Sometimes you can put this to 255, 240, but usually I use it 250 because that's more than enough. I don't want to go, you know, to put 255. It's just basically you're capping the white, the highlight, right? So I would put this to 250 or 240. That's more than enough, right? Now, obviously you can see some weird effects going on here, right? So what you can do is basically go to the fog color. So now we're gonna start controlling this, refine this wax material, right? So now what you need to do is basically, let's just say we're creating something like, I don't know, something like that, right? Or something like that. Obviously you can pick a color if you want to, but I'm just gonna eyeball it. So fog color, that's gonna be a warmish color, something like that, right? And the next thing you need to do is basically put this value down, which is going to be your intensity, right, of this color. So look what's going to happen when I'm going to start putting the intensity down, right? Bam, right? So if I'm going to put 255, bam, I'm not getting anything, right? Now look what's going to happen if I'm going to put 245. Boom. Your wax translucency material is starting to work, right? So 255 basically is kind of ignoring the color because you're literally capping out the white, the intensity color, right? So I wouldn't recommend you using 255 on any material, honestly. Never use a 255 or 0. Always go 1 or 250 the maximum, right? Never go 255, never go below 1. So that's a rule that you have to obviously marinate into your brains, okay? Into your brains. So in this case, I'm gonna put 240 and I'm gonna get this, right? So now if I wanna get a thicker wax material, I can go even lower. And now you can see how it's obviously reacting. You obviously see how beautifully it does the translucency, right? Now, so I'm gonna keep this for now, okay? So obviously, you know, you can ignore the bump map and the reflection. You can even ignore the displacement there. But I'm just basically want to make this a bit more, I want to make this look a bit better, a bit more realistic. And obviously you can take this to another level by playing around with it a bit more, maybe, you know, acquiring better dirt maps or bump maps or whatever, just experimenting with the material, right? And the object as well. So I'm gonna apply everything again. So bump map, just to sharpen up that bump map a bit, and obviously reflection glossiness, which we're mixing 50%, 50 by 50, right? So this is what we're getting right now. Obviously, even from the light cache, you can see how it works, right? So, you know, you can obviously decide a lot from just a light cache pass, right? So you can see that these corners there are quite translucent, right? So the light is coming in, and obviously it hits the surface and it scatters through the surface, right? So now look what's gonna happen if I'm gonna put the fog multiplier to 0. Bam. So I'm literally killing the effect, right? Well, the object is still translucent, but basically I'm just killing the color. Now look what's gonna happen if I'm gonna put you know, bigger number, so you can see that the preview is changing, but my preview here is not changing at all. So I'm gonna put it higher. Now I'm gonna put this to 1, right? So I'm just trying to show you guys how this is reacting to my changes, right? So bam, bam, there you go. So 0.4, 0.5. Usually if you want to create a more thinner wax, you go lower. If you want to create a more thicker wax, you know, basically, you know, take the full potential of the translucency settings, you know, I would put this to 1 or something like that, right? It's gonna work perfectly fine. If you're gonna go lower, it's basically gonna be more translucent, etc., right? Now this fog color obviously will control the looks of it, right? The color of it. And obviously it controls, if you're gonna go up, it will control the effect, obviously almost the opposite way, right? So you want to make this a bit more, obviously if you want to make like a wax liquid or something like that, you can try to experiment with this kind of thing, right? But obviously in this case I don't really want to do that. I want to create something like along those lines for now. All right, now if I'm gonna put, I'm gonna show this again, you know, you're getting something like a liquid. So this is some kind of a, you know, this is working almost the opposite way, right? So if you're gonna make a really light color, it's gonna kind of look the same, right, as you put here 0. So just keep that in mind. So I would put this to 1, and obviously you can control the fog color. If you're gonna go up, that's gonna obviously be more you know, transparent. If you're gonna go really up, you know, that's how it's gonna work here. 240, bam, it's almost like a liquid. And then you can play around with this number a bit, you know, and get different effects. Basically you're just multiplying the fog, right? So I'm gonna put to 1, and I'm gonna put this color to something like that. So we want to create a hard surface wax. And now the fog bias, basically this is controlling the contrast, sorry about that, guys. I'm after work, I'm a bit tired. It's 20:30 p.m. So yeah, don't mind me. So I'm gonna put 20. So as you can see, it does lighten up my you know, wax material a bit, right? And you know, I can go 50, for example. You know, you're not gonna get a lot of differences if you're gonna put really high up, you know, 500, for example. You're not gonna get a lot of difference, but obviously if you're gonna use 5, 2, 1, 0, and now we're gonna pass to the negative side, so -5. So now you can see how contrasty it does look, right? So it gives so much contrast in the middle parts, and on the outside it still retains a bit of that color, right? So now look what's gonna happen if I'm gonna put 2. So you can see how it does react. -1, oops, sorry, -1. And for example, we're gonna put 0, there we go. Or we can put 2, but in this case we're gonna put 0, right? So really experiment with that, you know, see what works better for you. And now just keep in mind one thing, I did rescale this. Usually in my previous videos of Vray materials, this dummy ball was 1 meter diameter, right? So obviously you can see that 1 meter there. So if I'm gonna go to the perspective, you can see that I did shrink this ball down, and obviously I applied X forms from here, reset X forms. Sometimes, well, this thing will work all the time. Sometimes when you apply, I've noticed that sometimes when you apply X form here, sometimes it doesn't really apply the X form correctly. Sometimes your material values are screwed up either way. I'm not sure, maybe Max fixed that bug in 2020, but yeah, I'm not sure about that. So basically I usually use this reset X form here, but you have to ungroup and unlink your objects, because this is not gonna be active, right? So, you know, you can experiment with the modifier, or you can experiment with that one. Sometimes, like I said, this one works fine, but 100% of the times this works correctly. And then you obviously collapse the object, right? So obviously your dimensions of the object will change. All right, so I'm gonna go to my camera here and I will expand my, whoops, sorry. So I will expand my renderer here. And the next thing we can try to experiment is obviously leave the hard wax model, right? Now for the scatter coefficient, I was talking about this a bit earlier for liquids and even plastics and glass, but basically what this does is just changes how the translucency reacts, right? So basically how the light rays are scattering through the object, and obviously how they are obviously calculated, and you know how they react basically. And obviously you can see here how differently this object looks now, right? So we just literally flipped the number. So that was 1 by default, we put 0, right? Or for example 0.5. So now we can see a bit of a different effect, but in my opinion and in my tests, I saw that, you know, 0 and 1 works kind of in the, you know, in the best way, in a more realistic way. But obviously you can experiment with the forward and backward coefficient. You know, it will give you a different look, but you know, just be really careful. Like, you know, your wax material has to look like a wax material, right? And by the way, if you have any other doubts, you can go to Google and type Vray chaos docs translu. See, did I type it wrong? Nope, I think so. All right, so there we go. So for example, we can go here and go, where is it? Translucency, nope. We just need to find that tab. There we go. So for example, forward and backward controls the direction of scattering for a ray, right? For a light ray. A value of 0 means a ray can only go forward away from the surface inside the object. 0.5 means that the ray has an equal chance of going forward and backwards, right? And 1 means ray will be scattered backwards towards the surface, okay? So by default it's 1, so means a ray will be scattered backwards towards the surface, right? To the outside of the object. So I mean, honestly, these how I learned V-Ray is basically just testing it out, okay? So obviously I have experience with V-Ray for 12 years now, and don't get me wrong, I use Corona as well. It really depends what kind of project are you doing. You know, there is a tool for a particular job, right? There is a right tool for a right job. So if I'm doing something a bit more smaller, an interior scene maybe, or something like that, you know, maybe I will jump to Corona because it's quite convenient to work, and the interactivity is really nice there as well. But obviously if I'm gonna jump on a bigger scale project, a bit more complicated project, that's obviously a no-brainer. You're gonna choose V-Ray, right? And I done that so many times. Obviously, you know, Corona can handle big projects, but obviously it's really RAM thirsty and you need to optimize your scene a bit more. And like I said, it's just basically a it's gonna eat your RAM really fast. And if you have 32 gigs of RAM, yeah, good luck. So especially if you want to create a site plan or something like that. All right, so as you can see, obviously it gives us some preview there. So I'm gonna change this to 1 because like I said, I was getting a bit more realistic and much more nicer effects there. Now the backside color, obviously this one is quite important actually. You can play around with these colors a lot more. So for example, as you can see, if I'm changing this color, I'm kind of changing like the backside color. I wouldn't say it's like a backside color. To me, it looks like some kind of like a scattering color inside, right? So basically, I can multiply this color here, as you can see, this gray, this beige color. I can literally multiply this, or if I'm changed to another color, it will change to, you know, different colors, but they will look white saturated, and in a way, you can't get really nice effects. But in this situation, we will use a bit of a warmer color there. That's about it. Now for the thickness, it's really important. Obviously, this is by default, it's 1000 centimeters. By the way, I'm working in, and I would suggest that as well, work system units, centimeters and centimeters in the system and on the display, right? I will not recommend you to use different settings here. So for example, some people do like to use, for example, display units meters or centimeters, and the system units will be millimeters. And I had so many issues with modifiers and spline modifiers, and even Forest Pro, Vray Fur, and all of that kind of stuff. I had issues with that, and even with translucency, with V-Ray materials as well, with translucency settings and all of that kind of stuff. So really be careful with what settings are you using. I will be showing you obviously how to set up that in my introduction V-Ray materials video, so please do check that out, because I want you to get the same results, right? So let's just say this dummy ball is not anymore a 1 meter diameter, right? So basically what I can do is measure my ball, right? My scene, there we go. So for example, so at the moment this is as I remember, it was around 40 or 30 centimeters. So this is 20 centimeters diameter. So that's, that's more than enough. It's not too big, right? It's not 1 meter. But let me just recalculate that. Obviously, you can measure this in, where is it? Measure, there you go. So obviously you can see the diameter, the dimensions of the ball and of this one as well, right? It's basically showing you the dimensions of it, but usually I like to just draw a box or something like that, right? All right, so let's go back to our wax material. So let's experiment a bit more. So let's put here maybe 3 centimeters. There we go. So obviously, with this setting, your scattering distance will change a bit. So basically, this is saying how thick your material is, right? So now, I'm gonna render this region maybe here. So obviously I apologize for my potato CPU. It does take a while to render, and I'm using quite low settings here. Obviously I'm rendering this with brute force light cache because it is a more physically accurate result than a radiance map. So that's 2 centimeters. Now that's 0. Now you can see how it's reacting, right? Always when you are checking or learning materials, always put massive numbers or small numbers, because V-Ray is not a really good render engine just to, if you hover it or something like that, V-Ray could tell you, if you're gonna go lower, your blah 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 is gonna go lower, your light is gonna be a lot, there's gonna be a lot less scattering, blah blah blah, right? So something like that. So if you're gonna go, for example, 500, you're gonna get more scattering into your object. So obviously you can go here as well. So for example, thickness, right? So scatter coefficient thickness limits the rays that will be traced below the surface. This is useful if the whole subsurface volume does not need to be traced. Honestly, this explanation here for a beginner, that's not gonna mean completely anything. Literally, you're just gonna be a lost boy, right? So and I was like that as well. So what I literally did is create a studio scene, which is going to be really, really simple, right? And I'll be showing you that as well. But the best thing that I've noticed, what you can do about it is to create that material on a really simple object and test it out by yourself. Literally just sit there and crank, okay, what does this number do? 0, bam, okay, that looks like crap, right? Obviously for some situations maybe you will want to use it, like, so for example, if I'm going to disable it, In some situations you might want to get this some kind of a look like this, right? I mean, I'm this is perfectly fine. So for example, if I'm going to put here to 0 and this to 1, I can get really weird effects, right? So you're literally looking for a result that you're gonna like, or you're looking for a result that you're holding it in your hands or as a reference on the internet, right? So don't be afraid to experiment. This is all about experimentation, right? And obviously now with interactivity on V-Ray, it got a lot more easier, right? Because you can just run the interactive mode, and you can even drag a region there and just basically render that region there, or on a smaller resolution as well. So now I'm gonna put 1, 2, 5, and obviously my translucency effect will change, right? And even the bottom bit is working really nicely. You get a bit more translucence on this thin corner, and obviously the object is getting thicker and thicker, and obviously the fog will work its way up, right? And like I said, if you want to change the color, oh yeah, the last thing I wanted to obviously mention, so basically, a really dark color. So now look what's going to happen if I'm going to apply a lighter color. Obviously you don't see a lot of changes, but if you will control the refraction down, which I wouldn't recommend doing that, right? So as you can see, you're getting some kind of a weird effect here. I would recommend refraction, keeping the refraction 240, 250, something like that, right? So to activate the translucency, keep this in mind. First rule, you have to apply refraction, right? Now reflection, obviously it's up to you. Do you want it to make it look matte looking or really glossy? It's up to you what you're creating there. And for the diffuse, I would recommend putting this to 1 because it's gonna give you the most contrast, right, in your material. Now the IOR 1.45, the fall color, really it's up to you. Experiment with the color and the intensity. Keep that in mind. Intensity is really, the value of the intensity is really important in creating wax material. So lower is gonna be more matter, more thicker, it's gonna look like a really thick hard wax material. If you're gonna go up, that's gonna look like a more like a liquid melted wax or something like that. Now the fog multiplier, like I said, play with it. If you're gonna go low, it's gonna get more, less of that effect there. As you can see, it's gonna get more translucent, right? It's gonna get more thinner, and obviously it's getting more thinner. It looks more like a liquid, and this is almost like really liquidy, watery effect, but obviously it's wax, right? So like I said, really experiment from 0.3 to 1 even, or something like that. Fog bias is just the contrast. You go up, you're gonna get a lighter, more translucent material. I wouldn't say it's gonna be more translucent material. It's just gonna be like a lighter, globally like a lighter material approach. And now hard wax, that's really important. Scatter coefficient, work with try to play around with them. It really depends what kind of effect you want to get, but 0 and 1 works really well. Now for the thickness, experiment with that. For example, if my object is 1000 meters, obviously you will play around with this setting, right? And obviously keep in mind that these settings, as you can see here, 1, this will affect your scale. So let's just say you're working in millimeters. So when I say millimeters, that means you're choosing millimeters in the display and you're choosing millimeters in the system units, right? So keep in mind that display is only for the display. This is going to be what is going to be displayed here or on your settings, right? Now, but in general, in system units, your Max is going to understand everything in millimeters. Is just the preview that you're going to see. It's going to be in centimeters, just for you to understand this better, right? But in my 12 years of experience, I will recommend this. Use the same unit everywhere. Don't use display different. Don't use a different unit for the system unit scale, right? Like I said, I had issues, and really it's a really annoying issues as well. and literally so simple issues as well to fix. So just keep this consistent, right? Now, I'm not saying that you cannot work in millimeters or so, millimeters, or meters. You can, but just try to keep those numbers, sorry, those display and system units both together similar, right? The same, sorry. But my recommendation will be always this is, exteriors, for example, and interiors work in centimeters. That will be just perfectly fine. It works really well with lighting units and all of that kind of stuff. When you're switching to millimeters, you have to crank your lighting units to really, really massive numbers, and that's a bit annoying. Now, you can work in meters as well, especially when you work with site plans or something like that. So for example, a really big neighborhood, right? Or something like that. Meters would be my choice, but like I said, centimeters is some kind of like a Goldilocks for me. Like a Goldilocks zone is just perfect. You can work with exteriors or interiors. You shouldn't have any really bad problems. Now, when you work with millimeters with side plans or big areas, you will have, viewport clipping issues, and that's a really annoying thing as well. Obviously, you can clip the clipper here on the viewport, but yeah, it is a bit annoying, right? So this is your wax material, and as you can see, this is a wax 01. And this is a basic wax material here, right? So we can obviously create something different here. So for example, we can apply this over here, and just put this like that. So let's just say we want to create something like a wax, I don't know, wax gonna be 02, right? And let's just say we want to create something a bit more drastic, right? So let's just say we're gonna put a reddish color, something like that, right? Some a bit more like a pinkish color here. So we're gonna increase this setting there. So now keep in mind that the backside color, the scattering color is gonna be a bit, obviously to the whitish side. We're gonna put this to maybe 50. Obviously my object is a lot smaller, so 5 maybe. There we go. And now look what's gonna happen if I'm gonna control the fog bias, right? So let's just say I want a lot of contrast from it, right? So -3. All right, so this is what I'm getting. So let's just say I'm gonna put 4. And this is what we're getting now, right? So let's just say I'm gonna put -1. I just I'm basically experimenting with the material, right? And now I'm gonna put this to maybe a darker color. Something like that, right? There we go. And let's just put this to 0.7 maybe. And this color, we're gonna make it maybe lighter. It really changes the look of it, right? So look how really cool this looks, right? Obviously you would need to change the glossiness to 0.8 or 0.9 if you're creating something like that, right? But let's just say we're gonna create something really, really matte, right? And a bit more saturated maybe. A bit more saturated, there we go. So I'm gonna, it's gonna be fine for me now. So let's just render some areas there so you can see the translucency working here really, really nicely. And let's just say we want to create a really, really matte looking wax material. Obviously don't forget to control the reflection glossiness as well, right? Because we're mixing at 50%. So obviously some parts of this material will be more reflective, some parts will be less reflective, right? But this is how it looks. So I apologize again for my slow CPU. But obviously these videos of mine are taking a bit longer to show you, just because the CPU is rendering a bit too slow, right? So this is how this wax material is looking. And from then on, just experiment with the colors. I mean, it's a really nice, easy approach with these with V-Ray material. Now, like I said, you can try to play around with where is it, fast SSS2. There you go. So really easy. These are your settings, you know, blackish coral, almost black, reflection, glossy reflection. You can put a map if you want to, refraction on, IOR 1.45. Play around with the fog color, with the fog multiplier down, the color down as well, something in the middle for a thicker wax. Fog bias, this is the contrast, right? This is your thickness. Play around with it. It depends from your object dimensions, obviously. Choose the hard wax. Leave this by default, works really well. Light multiplier also, you know, if you want to change this, look what's going to happen if I'm going to change this to 0. Bam. Right now, look what's going to happen if I'm going to change to 0.5, 1, 1.5, 5, 10. Obviously you're seeing that it's globally just basically lightens this material, this wax material up, right? Literally it's like radioactive, honestly. So, you know, don't over exaggerate with this light multiplier. It's basically what this setting is doing is, I'm gonna try to explain this in a simple way. You know, you have, let's just say I have in my scene, I have an HDRI map, which is obviously, you know, producing light into my scene, right? So basically what this light multiplier does is literally multiplying my light. So if I would be, you know, going to my light source and literally multiplying the intensity there, right? So obviously I am pulling more light into my object, right? Or something like that. So don't try to overcomplicate this. Honestly, you can see with your you know, you can literally see with your eyes what it is going on, right? So 0, you know, the light is going to be really you know, subtle. 2, 1, and obviously you can see how it works. And obviously test render the regions. If, you know, for example 2 works fine, you know, you're good to go. If 3 works fine, you're good to go. You know, if you're gonna go to 5 and something looks really weird and overexposed, you know, bring back the number down, right? So I'm gonna put this to 1 by default because it does give really nice effects here. So so like I said, really play around with colors. As you can see, you know, you can get really different looks. For example, I'm gonna go like this, something like that. Maybe desaturate this a bit, and maybe let's try to put this to 2, put this to 5 or 1, and go desaturating. There we go. Let's put 10, put this to 6, put this to -2 maybe. There we go. Let's just desaturate this a bit, or maybe saturate it more. All right, let's kill the backside color a bit. There we go. So, you know, you can create really different effects. So for example, if you're gonna go here, you know, you can create something like, for example, this greenish wax material, as you can see, right? So really play around with it, right? Obviously I will be creating obviously in this video I showed you guys how to create fur materials and how to create, obviously I'm showing you now how to create a wax material and how to manipulate with it, but I will be creating maybe 10 fur materials for you guys, just to, you know, use them and experiment with them and learn from them a bit. And I will be creating maybe 15 wax materials, so you can, you know, get your head around it by checking my setup and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that's gonna help for you guys. So, but this is, you know, this is what you can obviously experiment with. And for example, I will kill the light a bit, and you can get really different effects, right? So 0.4 and all of that kind of stuff. You can see that you're getting a bit more translucent, right? So your object is becoming more thinner, right? So, you know, play around with it with colors and all of that kind of stuff, right? If you want to create a white material, play around with the colors as well. So 1, Let's put this to yellowish white. There we go. And let's put this to 8. Put this to 0. And put this to a yellowish side, something like that, and something like that. There we go. So, you know, really try to experiment with it, right? There we go. Anyways, so I think that you got an idea of how to create a wax material. Now I will show you, I mean, I can show you, I have a bit more time to talk about this. So let's just say this is a very fast SSS2 material, right? So I'm gonna apply this material. I was showing this material on I totally forgot where I was showing this, on the liquids. Okay, so I was showing this on liquids. I think I created some for plastic and glass. I cannot remember now, honestly. I created so many materials, but fast SSS, this material is really nice, don't get me wrong, but it's just for a beginner is going to be a bit more overwhelming by just looking with these settings. Obviously you have overall color, you have diffuse color, you can obviously multiply that diffuse color, then you can choose a different color mode, which is going to be subsurface color plus scatter radius, and then it's, you know, a scatter coefficient, which should be ideal for wax materials, right? And fall color, blah blah blah, right? So, you know, it makes sense a bit, obviously, when you know. Even for me, I try not to use this fast SS material just because it takes more time. Literally, it takes more time to set up and play around with it, which is annoying. Obviously, if you would have a CPU which would have a, you know, 64 cores or even more than that, you know, you can try play around with it, obviously. And like I said, there's no right or wrong, just test out the numbers and see how it works. But straight from the get-go, I'm gonna just apply straight from the get-go. Dang. Okay, where that came from. So I'm gonna apply this color here. As you can see, obviously I'm not using any bump maps or anything like this in my material. Now I can apply a, you know, I can copy the shift copy it to a, where is it, to the bump texture, right? So I will get more of that detail, and obviously I can apply this to a reflection, blah blah blah, but at the moment I'm not gonna bother with it. So what you have here in the fast SSS2 material is obviously you have some presets, right? So for example, you know, you have marble white and blah blah blah. Obviously it does look really bad, so I'm gonna show you just in a sec how to obviously change that a bit. So for example, skin yellow, blah blah blah, right? So for example, in this case I will choose maybe, you know, even if when you choose orange juice, that's not gonna work, right? So, you know, for a beginner that might look weird and really horrible, but obviously you just have to go to option single scatter and choose that to refractive, because that will be a refractive object. Sometimes it does not really work really well, right? So like I said, in this, with these presets are just for how can I say, this is just a base for you to work from, right? So for example, I want to create a wax material, and I did notice that I think ketchup preset was working quite nice. So I'm gonna choose fall color. All right, now this is a bit more complicated, this is a bit more annoying if you ask me. So I'm gonna put 1.45, the scale, I'm gonna choose scale to 5, and obviously you're not seeing a lot of differences here. And now for the diffuse color, I will choose a lighter something like that color. Overall color, I'm not gonna choose anything here, I'm gonna keep this at white. Now for the diffuse amount, I can go to 1, right, something like that, or I can go to 0.2 or something like that, right, just mixing it up a bit. Now the scatter coefficient, I will go with something, I don't know, maybe in the middle somewhere. Now for the fall color, I kind of want to go with the same-ish color there. All right, now let's just increase the scatter radius. Now this will become slower, slower, and slower, right? So when you're gonna switch to these different scatter modes, it will affect your rendering time, just so you know, right? So in this case, I will choose refractive because it does work a lot better with these kind of translucency refractive materials. Now scatter GI, I would turn this on because it does give a bit of a better result, but it's not um, it's not gonna render faster, just for sure. So just keep that in mind, that scatter, when you're applying GI to these kind of materials, they are rendering, you know, slower. Now let's just, you know, try to play around with this material a bit more, right? So for example, obviously I'm not gonna, you know, try to explain each and every setting. I'm just gonna basically show you, you know, how to manipulate and how to work with it. So for example, for specular glossiness, specular amount, right? So this is like your reflection color, right? So something like that. And glossiness, obviously it's going to be glossiness, right? So for the glossiness, we want to put to 0.5. So we're going to want to make this really matte looking. There we go. Now for the specular amount, I will maybe choose 0.6 or 0.7. I'm not sure. Specular color. By the way, this is going to be obviously white, and I will choose this as a bit of a darker color, maybe 220. All right, so now trace reflections, refraction depth, everything here is set up almost correctly for now. Maybe we can increase this to 0.6 for now. Now, the most important thing is going to be obviously these settings here, right? So now I'm going to show you how it works. So for example, -1. Now you're getting a completely different result. Now if you're getting basically, this is like a phase function. Read about this a bit more on Vray docs, but the main thing is it's the scattering directions are gonna change a bit, as you can see here, right? So -1, it's really similar to you know, to these settings over there, 0 and 1, right? All right, so let's just try to play around with the diffuse amount. Let's just put this to 0. All right, so now the scatter coefficient, let's try to play around with this color a bit. As you can see, it's quite slow to process it, right? Put this here, and let's just put this to 0.8. Yeah, it's really slow to process it, right? And that's why I usually don't choose the fast SSS material. One, there we go. So 0.5. So, you know, we're getting something a bit more closer because obviously I did over exaggerate because I totally forgot that my object wasn't 1 meter anymore. It is actually 20 centimeters, okay? So as you can see here, scatter radius in centimeters, it's you know, 0.5 centimeters. So, and this is, as you can see, it's really sensitive, right? So if I'm gonna put 0.2, you know, I'm gonna get a thicker looking wax material. There we go. So we're rendering that, and we can maybe put this to 0.5. Let's try to render that. Okay, so it's getting a bit more matte looking, which is what I want. Now let's try to play with the phase function. And now you can see this is really thick, right? So when you're going to the negative side, this will look really thick, almost looks like plastic if you ask me. Now if you're gonna go to the positive side, it will give you more of a translucency effect. Right now 1 is literally killing it. I'm not sure why is that, because 0.9 works really well. 0.95. So what is the maximum number here? I'm just trying to check the depth of it. All right, there we go. So 0.8, I think that's more like appropriate number. 0.5, don't really like that. 0.9, I think I like that a bit more. 0.1 centimeters. All right, so 5. Yeah, and that's not working anymore because it's really sensitive, right? So 0.05, 0.1. So I want that scattering effect on the edges. As you can see here, I'm getting a lighter scattering effect there, and I'm getting a darker scattering effect there. So let me just check this to a lighter color. Let's just check this to a darker color. Obviously it's getting thicker and it's getting more lighter. So I want a bit more lighter color and maybe a bit more saturated. Okay, let's just maybe leave this as is for now, and let's just try to experiment and show you guys how the scatter coefficient is working. So let's just say I'm gonna go up. You can see how light it becomes, right? And it's becoming darker and darker and darker and darker and darker, right? So let's just say I want something along those lines for the intensity, and let's just say that's a bit too much. I want something really neutral. All right, so let's just say along those lines. Now for the diffuse amount, obviously we can't put this to 1, but literally that's gonna kill our translucency completely. So I mean, don't get me wrong, you can, mix it up if you want to, but I would definitely recommend using this at 0, right? And obviously this diffuse color will not give any effect until you're gonna put a higher number there. Overall color, you can try to experiment with this color as well. As you can see, it gives you like a tint color. So you can choose, for example, you're happy with your settings here, you can, I'm gonna tint my object something in like, this some kind of this color or something like that. And really just play around with it as well. I mean, you can get different effects with this, but just keep in mind that it does, in some situations it does take longer to render, right? But you should get almost the same timings as this one. But I've noticed it really depends what kind of settings are you using here and here. For example, fog bias, fog multiplier, and all of that kind of stuff. It depends how much does it scatter the light and all of that kind of stuff. So really just try to experiment on your own object, and just keep that in mind that not every object will react the same, right? So not every object will react the same to to a different light or so. So now I'm increasing the scatter radius. You can increase the scale as well. So this is gonna be more like a global effect. You can see you're getting a different effect. If you like that, you can use that. I'm gonna switch to 1, and I'm gonna start increasing this number here. There we go. If I'm gonna put 5, obviously it's gonna look a bit more, it's gonna start to look a bit more like a water or glass material, right? So you have to be really careful with this number. 0.5. I think 0.5 is doing some justice here. Now the fog color, I'm not a fan of it, so I'm gonna just try to remove this. If we're gonna put this something drastic, it's gonna change this quite dramatically, right? And the fog color is almost gonna be like like this color here, and obviously the backside color will take effect as well. So let's just try to change this number, sorry, this color. There we go. So let's just try to change to something, I don't know, maybe bluish. All right, let's just go back to our original stage. Put this to 8. Try to put this to whitish color. There we go. Scatter coefficient. Let's try to increase this a bit. Put this to 0.5. And let's just put this to, I don't know, something like, I'm not sure. Do I want to make this lighter or darker? I'm trying to get that. Sorry, not a diffuse color. This looks a bit too greenish. Let's try to desaturate this. Okay. And let's try to increase this number a bit. All right. So as you can see, it does give us a quite cool effect. Now, remember that it is scattering the light from the H2 map as well into my object, right? So just keep that in mind as well, because you know, if you're gonna have a reddish light, you know, hitting your object will become a bit more, you know, reddish. It will scatter that red light there, right? So, but obviously you can see that you can create wax materials with fast SSS as well. It just takes more time. That's about it. Basically, you know, you have to play around with these settings if you want. You know, I didn't show you what this does. So scatter radius, there we go. So obviously you can see that this will not work with creating wax materials. You have to choose scatter coefficient plus fog color. Only then, you know, you will be able to create some kind of a, you know, wax looking material. Now scatter. Now look what's gonna happen if I'm gonna change to none. You're gonna start getting a bit of a different effects. Simple. Now keep in mind that these settings will increase or decrease your rendering time. So this is gonna be fast. This is gonna be you know, a bit slower, and these ones are gonna be, you know, a lot slower, right? Now scatter GI, as you can see how that affects, right? That's literally you know, no effect at all. Now if I'm gonna press scatter GI, bam, you're gonna get a completely different effect. So just keep that in mind as well. Reflection depth, I wouldn't change this. Sorry, I wouldn't change the reflection depth at all. Refraction depth, you know, I wouldn't change this to 10 or 20 or something like that, because it will take longer to render and process it. Phase function, let's just try to go -5. Bam, there we go. 1, you know, that's not working like you expect. And 98, that's really translucent, right? So it is changing those ray directions. There we go. And 8, there you go. That's an 8. 0.8 works quite nicely. I've noticed with wax materials. If you're gonna go lower, you know, you're gonna get a more different effect there, a more thicker effect. I kind of prefer the 0.8. Now the radius, it's really important as well. So the radius will affect your look, but it will, remember this, it will depend on your object thickness or how big it is, right? So my object is 20 centimeters, so you know, I have to be really careful with those numbers there. And let's just try to create a completely whitish color. All right, so let's desaturate this one as well. want a black. I want something a bit more to those lines. Point 2. And let's just change this to something like that and maybe put to 0.3. Let's just render a small region and see how it looks. So it doesn't look that bad. I'm still getting the scattering effect. Now on some areas it doesn't look that well, so I'm gonna go back to 0. Let's render this region here again. There we go. Now let's just try to put this to 0. All right, so this is what I'm getting here. I was kind of curious as well. 0.2 was working fine. 0.1. 0.1 was working fine for this size of the object. And you know, just play around with it. Basically, if you're gonna increase the scale, you know, you're not getting some kind of like a wax material. You're getting more like a, I don't know, like a rubbery material. It looks kind of weird. So there we go. Basically, my verdict would be to use a Vray material with translucency. You just have I'm not gonna say a lot more freedom, which it is the case, and in a lot easier way, in my opinion, right? Now with this one, it's kind of hit and miss. You will spend more time juggling around with these settings, which is, to me, it's kind of annoying because you spend so much time just, you know, trying to create something so simple, right? So obviously play around with these settings. I just showed you how to manipulate with them. Specular tab or specular layer tab, whatever you want to call this. This is like, you know, a specular color is your reflection color. Basically, if you're going to change this to reddish tint, your speculars, your reflections, you know, your glossy reflections are going to be that color. Basically, it's like changing the reflection color, right? Now the specular amount, it's the intensity of how strong it will be. The specular glossiness is going to be, you know, how matte or how glossy it's going to be. The subdivs, use it at 8. You don't need to increase this number. Trace reflections, obviously you want that on. Reflection depth 5 is more than enough. And obviously don't forget to switch this to ray trace refractive. It does work a lot more realistic. And obviously it depends what kind of result do you want to get, but you know, do play around with these settings. Simple and none is rendering faster, refractive is rendering slower. Don't forget to apply the GI, right? The cutoff threshold, keep this at default. You don't need to change this to you know, a lower number because it will render longer. Now this tab is obviously quite simple. This is quite simple. This is quite simple as well. The IOR, right? The preset basically doesn't make any sense. And please don't try to use them. Use them just for the base. That's it. Now I switched this to ketchup just because, you know, it had some settings there, blah blah blah, but still I needed to go ray trace refractive just to obviously apply this, you know, waxy looking material to make this look like a wax. And your most important tab is going to be this one here, right? So you're going to be playing around with these settings by quite a bit. So you have 1 2 3. Well, that's kind of, it's not a setting, but it's just a diffuse color. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 settings, right? So when we go to Vray material, we have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Honestly, I will say this: you have more control with Vray material translucency than with this one, in a way. Obviously I'm not calculating these ones and this one. You get, yes, you get more you know, you get more you know, you can get more bounces of the GI and all of that kind of stuff, but it's just in my opinion, in my experience, and I'm talking about myself here, I've noticed that I'm getting a much more faster results with Vray material translucency rather than with this one, right? And for whatever reason you want to experiment with fast SSS, please do. You can create a wax material. As you can see here, these are the settings for a really simple wax material. And keep in mind, if you're gonna put a light there, you know, that light will scatter into your object, and obviously this candle or, you know, object wax material, whatever it is, it will take your, you know, light from your scene as well. So just do keep that in mind as well, right? So play around with these settings, you know, as much as possible. Like I said, the most important settings are here, all right? So if you want to change a color for whatever reason or something like that, right? Or make it, you know, whitish, or, you know, just basically just try to play around with it. And as you can see, it is so sensitive, right? So it's really sensitive to sorry, that's the wrong number. There we go. So for example, you know, you can create an overall look which is going to be quite you know, important. So as you can see here, this is a more whiter wax. So for example, if I'm gonna go, but you know, you see how sensitive it is to a color, and I'm just changing a couple of numbers there, right? There we go. So for example, this one, that one. So, you know, just go crazy with it if you want to, right? And obviously then you have your scattering, you know, your fall color. So basically that color is going to be scattered inside of your object. So you can go something with a warmer approach, and scatter coefficient, maybe you can go a bit darker or something like that. So you can create, you know, different effects if you want to, right? So for example, I'm going to go with a warmer one. Then maybe I want to increase the effect there. And you know, just experiment with this works perfectly fine, obviously, but obviously I did show you, but to my eyes, this is taking a bit more time than playing around with this one, right? But that's my opinion. Honestly, you can choose. I did show you, you know, 3 examples here. I did create quite a lot of materials there for the wax, different colors and all that kind of stuff. But like I said, try to play around with V-Ray material first, and try to play around with the fast SSS if you want to. It really depends. So for example, you know, I created this material here, I applied there, and where is it? I've lost it. Okay, there we go. So this is the material that we're rendering now, right? And now look what's gonna happen if I'm gonna apply this material here, which was created from a V-Ray material. And I'm not gonna lie, this took honestly a couple of seconds to create this, right? Really simple, really easy to, it was really easy to understand and process. So I'm gonna apply that material there. So there you go. So obviously, in my opinion, this works really well as well. Don't think that, you know, oh, you know, this fast SSS is a lot more complicated. Yeah, it will do a better job, and it's gonna look, you know, 1,000 times better, right? It's not the case. If you can, you know, achieve, you know, completely the same or a really same result with this material, you know, you can do that, right? For example, I'm gonna apply this whitish, bam, and you can see how nicely the translucency is working on the bottom here. I mean, you can even see that from the light cache path. So you see getting lighter edges there and darker in the middle, and you can control the backside color. You can do whatever you want to do, right? And obviously you have the full control of the reflection color as well. You can change the reflection, right? So for example, I can do this reddish reflection. So literally it's kind of the same thing, honestly, but it's just a bit of a different approach. And you know, you don't need to use the fast SSS material. You can just, you know, create this with a simple V-Ray material, and obviously you know, you can create really nice effects here. as you can see, for example, this one, bam. Try this one, bam. You know, like a liquid wax material. That's really nice. I really liked it. So obviously all of this will be included into my master file just for you guys to experiment with this a bit more, right? So so listen up, guys. So I hope this made sense, how to create a wax material. It's not complicated, it's just basically, you know, experimenting with it. And obviously I did give you the keys, so you're gonna have to open the doors by yourself by experimenting with it, right? But I did show you where to go, what to press, and how these settings are, you know, applying to your object. And honestly, this like I said, this is not that complicated. Just play around with it. Looks really nice as a wax material. And play with the bump maps, play with the mask maps as well if you want to, play with the dirt maps, whatever you want to do. But this is the base material of, you know, how to create a wax material. So guys, don't forget to subscribe and like, and please share if you can, because I want to reach as much people as possible. So thank you very much, and see you guys in my next videos.